Is your watch is running?
It's a beautiful watch. And if you let it lay still for,
It stops on you?
it's battery operated.
Almost time.
Battery operated. You let it sit still for a day. It should not be motion.
That is so funny. I think my husband has one just like that too, and he's constantly having to shake it and just.
You have to be moving.
So you have to have the jitters all the
You
time.
do. You have to drink a lot of coffee. It's a coffee watch. It's a bullet.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. And now if it's only motion activated.
You never know where you are. You never know where I'm talking.
And if you're asleep, how are you going to be moving it? I mean, oh my goodness.
Thank you for noticing. So careful with. Yeah. I'm sorry. Shouldn't be talking about people. Will you pray for me?
Okay, can everybody hear me all right?
You are on the air.
Okay, thank you. All right, good evening, everyone here participating. Thank you so much for coming. Let's see, planning and zoning meeting. The time is 6:31. I will go ahead and call our meeting to order. And let's see, we have excused absences. Miss Angela Dodd and our chair, Ashley Zimmerman, is going to be arriving late. So I think that takes care of any of the roll call and excused absences. Oh, that's right. Okay. It's been a while since I've had to do that part. Can I go ahead and get a motion to vote for a motion for Miss Dodd?
To excuse absence for Miss Dodd and late arrival for
Miss
Chair
Zimmerman.
Zimmerman.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hines, second. And all in favor? Aye. All right. We are good. Okay. At this time, we will go to item number 3, which is our invocation and moment of silence. And if I could have Miss Hubbard, if you would like to give our invocation.
Bow your heads. As we get ready to meet.
Oh. Yeah. And then make sure
Can
it's,
you hear
I mean,
me?
not close where we're eating
Okay.
it, but I've
All
heard it
right.
has to be closer rather than farther away.
Doesn't matter if you stand for it.
As
I think we can do whatever we want. is
Whatever you
what we-
want.
Yeah.
whatever you want. As we get ready to meet tonight, may all sentient beings live in boundless equanimity, free from bias, attachment, and aversion. May all beings be peaceful, happy, safe, and awakened to the light of their true nature. Before we make decisions, may we collect our thoughts, clear our minds, and make decisions that benefit all and are for the betterment of the community. May we all be free and blessed.
Thank you. If we could now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, next we have item number 5, which is our citizens to be heard. So, Miss Peggy, because I literally don't have anyone signed up, do I still read? Do we still read it? Okay, so Mr. Hines, next time. Okay, and then item number 6, our consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes from November 15th, 2023, the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Do any of our commissioners have questions or remarks on the minutes? No. And everyone got a chance to review the minutes? Okay. Yes. So I go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes from November 15th, 2023.
I second it.
And I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, on to number 7, our public hearings for this evening. It looks like we have 3. And Miss Lindsay. Do you want us to? Okay, Mr. Hines, would you like to read item 7A for the public hearing, please?
All right, we will be conducting a public hearing regarding a request to rezone 432 Tully Road, legally described as Raby Estate Lot 1, 1.93 acres from the current zoning of low-density single-family residential, otherwise known as SF2, to manufactured home district MH1.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a rezoning request for 432 Tully Road. It's 1.93 acres. It's owned by Gerardo Padilla Barajas. It is located in Council District 7, and it's on Tully Road, just north of Ayala Lane. It is currently zoned low-density single-family residential, or SF2, and the proposed zoning is manufactured home district, MH1. So this will look very familiar to you, as last meeting you voted to, the applicant came forward with a conditional use permit to allow manufactured home residential use. However, that was denied at the November 13th City Council meeting, and at the direction of council, the applicant is pursuing a zone change to manufactured home district, MH1. And if you have any questions, staff is here to assist, as well as the applicant.
Okay, thank you. At this time, unless commissioners have any questions for staff, no, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. It is 6:36. Do we have anyone here this evening to speak on item A? Looks like we do not. So I will go ahead and close the meeting at 6:36. All right, next is item 7B. Miss Ashback, would you go ahead and read that one? Fishback. I'm still getting there, sorry.
No worries.
I got the back part instead of Beck this time.
So we're conducting a public hearing regarding 7B. Conduct a public hearing regarding a variance to Code of Ordinances, Section 58-5, to allow a wall sign that does not face a right-of-way at 778 Cibolo Valley Drive.
Thank
Hello
you.
again. This is a sign variance request for 778 Cibolo Valley Drive, Suite 107. The project is it's for Mod Pizza. It is owned by Endeavor Real Estate Group, represented by Patty Imbus with Britton Lift and Installation Services LLC. It is located off of in the Borgfeld Market commercial subdivision off of Cibolo Valley Drive. It is in Council District 2. The current zoning is retail office C3, and the proposed use is residential or a restaurant neighborhood. So the applicant is located within Borgfeld Market Shopping Center off the corner of Borgfeld Boulevard and Cibolo Valley Drive. It is surrounded by commercial properties within the retail, office, and general commercial zoning districts. The rear of the shopping center abuts the Walmart parking lot. And the applicant is requesting a variance to allow a sign to be placed on the back of the building that faces the Walmart parking lot. As of right now, the sign ordinance prohibits wall signs to be placed on facades that do not face public or private rights-of-way, of which the Walmart parking lot is neither. So if you have any questions, staff and the applicant, I believe, are here.
I do not have any questions at this time. I'm going to save mine for our discussion. Do any commissioners have anything? No? And do we have anyone here today to speak on this public hearing? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and open it at 6:38. I am super rusty at this. 6:38. We'll open the public hearing for item B. And there is no one here to speak on that, so we will close it at 6:39. Okay. Next, I have item 7C. Ms. Garcia, would you like to go ahead and read that one, item 7C?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Conduct a public hearing regarding a conditional use permit, CUP, for 10833, IH10, legally described as ABS, 134 Sir Jose Flores, 7.5100 AC, to allow concrete asphalt batching plant temporary use.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Yes, this is the first public hearing for, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow a concrete asphalt batching plant. Per the UDC Section 13.4, a concrete asphalt batching plants are allowed within all zoning districts with a conditional use permit. The applicant will need to meet all the requirements of UDC Article 4.3.2 conditional use permit guidelines. And this property is located off of I-10 within the Mixed Regional Employment Center, or MIR zoning district. It is east of the property is a single-family residence, also within the MIR, and all other properties directly adjacent to the property are within Cibolo's ETJ and are being used for agricultural purposes. Across I-10 are businesses and homes within the MIR. Further north is Aishan, which is within the I-1 zoning district. This request is tied to a specific project, the expansion of IH10, and it's only requesting occupation of the site until the projected completion of the project in October 2026. So they are contracted by TxDOT.
Correct.
For this project. Included in your packet are some suggested conditions should the conditional use permit be recommended for approval. It includes a time restriction, and it coincides with the contract date for their work, which is December 31st, to not go beyond December 31st of 2026. To meet plating requirements, however, the applicant has indicated that they are interested in submitting a waiver to that. So we may be seeing that request. They will need to go through a site plan approval process, submit all required building permits, meet the provision of a perimeter fence, a landscape buffer. The hours of operations, they have requested to follow hours of operations as necessary according to TxDOT, the TxDOT requirements. Meet dust mitigation. They do have a dust controller on the property. And then upon cessation of the use, that the condition of the property be restored to what it was prior to them starting the use there at that property. Last condition is that no other conditional use permits are allowed under this conditional use permit. Notices were published in the Seguin Gazette on November 26th and on the city's website. Letters were sent out to property owners within 200 feet. As of this date, staff has not received any in favor or in opposition. And additional public hearings are scheduled for December 13th. No, that's today. On January 9th with City Council, and approval, disapproval tentatively scheduled for January 23rd.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff?
I do. How many letters were sent out? 3.
3 letters. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I will go ahead and open the public hearing at 6:43. Do we have anyone here to speak on this item? Looks like we do. Yep. If you could come up to the microphone, please.
So I'm nervous. I've never been to a meeting like this before, but I own the house that's right next to where they want to put this plant.
Okay.
So my concerns are, I don't know if you
Yeah, go ahead and
can
feel
hear
free to
me.
use the microphone around. Yep.
I'm concerned about the sound, the smell. What is it going to do to the value of my property? How long? What time of day? I have photographs of how the property looked before when I bought it. I put a lot of work into the house, remodeled the inside, put a staircase. I was enjoying the view of the pond, and they came in and started filling it in, and there's lots of trash that floats over. I have photographs. I used to enjoy the animals coming there to eat and drink out of the pond and, just sit out on the porch and stuff. It took away, to me, the value of the house. But I know there's progress going on with all the lanes they're building and change is coming, but I just hope that you'll hear me. I did bring pictures if you want to see them.
I think you can hand them to Miss Peggy, and then she'll, or do you want her just to hand them to us?
There's
Is this the house? So this is not the unoccupied home, because I had
No,
something written in
it's-
here about there's an unoccupied home
it's
nearby.
not unoccupied. Yeah, no, it's the one right next to it.
The pond that's not on your property though. The pond's
Part
on.
of it is.
part of the pond is on your
because
property.
The property line kind of comes at an angle. They filled that in without my permission in the beginning. I think it was before Weber leased it. The owner was filling it in, and they stopped for a little while. Then Weber came along, and they were filling it with big culverts and wires and logs and trash bags and whatnot.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I don't know. It kind of turned the lake, the pond brown or red. I just kind of didn't know what to do.
Well, we're glad you came tonight. Thank you. I was going to take a look at the pond because I didn't know it was on any part of.
They pretty much all filled it in now.
Yeah. But you're saying part of it was actually on your property lines.
The property line comes at an angle, so that there's a little section of it that is.
Okay. Okay. Do we have anyone else speaking on this tonight for the open hearing? No. Okay. Did you turn in a letter for opposition if they're saying that no one's turned anything in? No, you didn't.
First letter I got.
Would she have been within range technically?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, do you have anything before I close the hearing? For discussion. Yeah, that's fine, because we can always ask her. We might ask you to come back up during our open discussion. So, and I'm sorry, and your first name again? Michelle. Thank you. Oh, you had something else? Oh, okay, go ahead. Come up.
Yeah, I had remodeled the house in hopes to, rent the rooms out, by the night. I had bought new furniture. I had completely remodeled it and thought that, it would make a nice, pretty view for someone, and it just completely changed everything.
Oh, okay. Like a B&B, or are you saying?
Sort
Okay.
of like that, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Michelle. If there's no one else to speak on this item, I will go ahead and close at 6:47. And we will go ahead and move to item 8A, which is our discussion and action items. So 8A is discussion and action regarding an invocation or moment of silence for future planning and zoning meeting agendas. I think from last meeting, we just had some questions, and we all, I think as a one unit and team, wanted to kind of discuss what we all felt comfortable with as a group. So if anyone has anything to speak on that, go ahead, Ms. Fishback. I did it.
Yes, thank you. So thank you. Yes, so I had to write this down just so that, to keep my thoughts in order. So I wanted to start with, our nation was founded under Judeo-Christian values. The First Amendment of the Constitution guarantees each one of us the right to freedom of speech and freedom of religion. In 2014, the Supreme Court upheld the right to prayer in public meetings. Our moral compass comes from God, which guides us to know the difference between right and wrong and good from bad. When you remove God as what has happened in society, right becomes wrong and good becomes bad. I am unapologetically Catholic and will not be silenced. May I remind our commissioners that we recite the Pledge of Allegiance, which states one nation under God. When we were sworn in as commissioners, we took the oath of office, which states in part, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the state of Texas, and the city of Cibolo, so help me God. We also signed a statement of elected appointed official, which also states, so help me God. So it begs the question, is it really about the invocation, or was it about the person who is saying the invocation? Now, here we are discussing this, and we'll vote on it to reinstate it. Why? If it can be removed without a discussion or vote, it should be reinstated without a discussion or vote. Out of respect for all, we need to reinstate the invocation followed by a moment of silence. St. Augustine always said, right is right even when no one is doing it, and wrong is wrong even if everyone is doing it. Thank you.
Okay. And I know I have comments, but I'll save mine until the rest of the commissioners have had anything to say as well.
I really can't add anything to Ms. Fishback's comments. I mean, it's been perfect. They're ideal. They are dead on. Absolutely the way I believe and the way I serve, the way I will continue serving, and whether someone wants to allow a prayer to be said or not, I will still be saying a prayer. But it has been a tradition. It's still a tradition within the council. It's a tradition within the Senate, within the House of Representatives. And I was extremely proud that it was a tradition here within our city of Cibolo. So we need to continue this, and I'll just stand up and say we will continue beginning our meetings with prayer.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
we can-
Hines.
Madam
Any other
Chairperson,
commissioners? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If I may, I think this may be a moot point. Normally, this would be something that's addressed in the bylaws for the commission. Y'all don't have specific bylaws, but I think city council has adopted bylaws by default for all boards and commissions within the city, and it includes invocation / moment of silence as an agenda, part of the agenda. So I think it's dictated from the top down in this case.
So it's been, bylaws have been adapted like last night's meeting or something?
No,
Because
I think
like
it's been
where,
a standing directive.
the-
I want to say
yeah.
it dates back from like 2020.
Yeah, the council has a write-up on how to conduct your meetings. And
Okay.
some of you received them when you first got on board. They're being redone, and everyone will be receiving them no later than your February meeting. But in there, it does have invocation / moment of silence, and that's what we put on a majority of all our committees and commissions, and that's how it's supposed to be placed on the agenda, because that's how the council has placed it, or has their how to conduct a meeting, and that's one of the areas, or one of the items on every agenda. So it's so if nobody wants to say a prayer, you say a moment of silence, and it's up to, so I don't think we need to have a vote on
We're on
it. It's,
8A.
I mean, but that's
Yeah.
the reason why the council has rules on how to conduct a meeting, and that's part of how to conduct a meeting, and it'll starts out with exactly what your agenda says. You call the meeting to order, you excuse or roll call. It
Okay.
covers
Yeah.
every single item on the agenda, and the moment of silence and the invocation is one of those items.
okay, well, we will look forward to receiving those. I don't remember receiving anything. I've been on almost 3 years. So the thought that I had from last time to this time was, since all commissioners are essentially created equal, and all of our thoughts and opinions and homework that we do is all valued and appreciated as a whole, I was kind of hoping we could spread it around so that maybe we didn't have to keep with the same person every time, and maybe we just kind of rotate through, and if that person chooses a moment of silence, then they do. If that person chooses an invocation with a type of prayer, great. If that person chooses an invocation with a more positive affirmation, I think that'd be great too. So that was kind of what I was going to, I appreciate knowing that I guess we're not supposed to vote on it, but I just want as a team, because we spend so much time together and hard work trying to help our city. I just want to make sure we all do feel comfortable, and we all feel heard, and we all feel valued. So if we just spread it out some and maybe we rotate through, I was wondering if that was something, that was what I was going to present, like, just kind of spread it around, and then everyone kind of gets to get in their own personal value beliefs without offending anyone else. And if we are offending, then that's where I heard we can get up and walk out if we choose not to.
Yeah, so I haven't read, we've been trying to get a copy of the directive or whatever council level document governs this. I haven't gotten a copy yet, but I think the way to do this would be to look at that. And I think council's looking at it and going to make changes or update it or whatever they're going to do. If it doesn't include, when it is updated, if it doesn't include the details required for y'all to implement it in a way that everybody's happy with, that's where you can do bylaws just for P&Z, where it goes into more detail about we're going to rotate or how you can opt out of it or whatever y'all want to do to implement that if it's not addressed specifically by council.
Okay.
So,
But we still always have a choice to like rotate through or like call on others to speak, or
it may dictate in that document how
that only
whether
the
it's supposed to
chair
be
or somebody
citizen
or
invited
something.
or only the chair.
But you
It
haven't
may be-
received a copy.
I have not as of right now.
But we know there is a copy.
There is a directive that was issued by council that governs this, along with other things, absences and ethical
All in
things.
it's all in one on how to, that's why you have to, it even tells you how to do an excused absence, because if you're gonna be
Yeah.
late for a meeting, or if you're not going to be at a meeting, you have to email the city secretary by a certain time or whatever. All of that is in this policy.
Okay.
And you guys will all get one no later than February. It's being approved by council. and getting
February.
An updated version of it.
Okay.
And so anything that, if we have any specifics from that point,
Then we can
then we
choose
can talk about it then.
Yeah, okay. So 8A, and I'll turn this over to you since I'm done with this item. So 8A, there is no action then. We just, what do we do with it?
It was just
There's
discussion.
nothing.
It's just discussion now. Okay. All right. And our chair is here, so I will go ahead and turn the floor back over to her for the meeting.
City staff, I've come unprepared today and I don't have a pen, so at any point in time, if there's an extra one, that would be great. I will try to keep tallies of what I have. So we are now on discussion action item, thank you, whoever this is. Discussion, action, and recommendation to the mayor and city council regarding preliminary plat for Steel Creek. I will open the floor for discussion between the commissioners. Does anyone have any comments? I'm sorry, Grant, go ahead. I'm a little out of the
No,
the
no
routine.
problem. No problem.
Go ahead, Grant.
Good evening, commissioners. This is a preliminary plat of Steel Creek Unit 9 subdivision. The owner is Continental Homes of Texas, represented by Pape Dawson Engineers, 25.172 acres in size, located southwest of the intersection of Knights Crossing and Lance Crossing in Council District 7, zoned per ordinance 1230 as SF2 and SF5 single-family residential, proposed for 36 single-family residential lots and 2 open space lots. Sewer and water will be provided by the city and electricity by GBEC. This is a proposed preliminary plat for Steel Creek Unit 9, 25.172 acres in size, establishing 36 single-family residential lots and 2 open space lots. A land study for this development was approved in 2018. This plat establishes 3,188 linear feet of roadway. A regional drainage study was submitted at the time of the land study that accounts for all further development of each unit. Compliance with the approved drainage study was verified as part of this review. Staff and the city engineer have reviewed the plat and associated documents. Per the review letter attached, there are comments pending. Therefore, staff is recommending denial of this plat. So we did receive a response to these comments late Monday, so it was distributed for review yesterday. Standard turnaround for resubmittals is about 5 business days, so we'll have any comments back to them early next week. However, this does go to council on January 9th, so that does give them time to potentially address all comments and then get it on council agenda with a recommendation change.
Thank
If
you,
have
Grant.
any questions, I'm happy to assist.
Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Now I will open the floor to any of the commissioners for a discussion of this item. Does anybody have any thoughts? Comments, issues? No? Okay, does anybody have a motion for this item?
I'll just make a motion for the denial of the request as per our planning department's professional analysis, and this will carry on to our council meeting in January.
Does that motion, is that okay?
If you are trying to do it based off the staff report, we do list that there are outstanding comments that are in there, and the comments are enumerated. So I would say if the motion can read recommendation of denial per outstanding comments.
Okay, that's what I thought you would say, so that's
we're
why
trying
I
to
asked.
shuffle through the stack of stuff to find that
Yeah, if
exact
you want
verbiage.
yeah, or if you want to find that sentence right there on the.
No, I couldn't find it in our package.
You know, I don't have it either in my packet. I thought it was.
Yeah, if you
Okay.
don't mind
I'll make
just
the-
stating it
I
out
can make
loud,
the
I'll say
motion.
what she said.
Yeah, I can make the motion. I move to recommend denial to city council and the mayor due to pending or outstanding comments. So motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Next item on our agenda is item 8C, discussion, action, and recommendation to the mayor and city council regarding a request to rezone 432 Tolly Road, legally described as Raby Estates, Lot 1, 1.93 acres, from the current zoning of low-density single-family residential SF2 to manufactured home district MH1.
Good evening. This is, again, the rezoning for 432 Tolly Road. It is currently zoned SF2, and the applicant is requesting to be rezoned to manufactured home district. The future land use map calls it out as neighborhood residential. So the applicant property is located within the SF2 zoning district. All immediate neighboring properties are also within the SF2 zoning district, with properties further north and south within Cibolo's ETJ. The primary uses of the surrounding properties are residential manufactured homes. There are currently 2 barn structures on the property located at 432 Tolly Road. And the applicant requested a conditional use permit to allow the placement of a manufactured home that was denied at the November 13th, 2023 City Council meeting. The council directed the applicant to pursue a zoning change to manufactured home district, MH1. A notice was published within the local newspaper on November 26th, as well as the city website. Individual letters were mailed out to 9 property owners, and to date, staff has only received 1 response, and that was in opposition. Public hearings are scheduled for tonight, December 13th, and January 9th, 2024, with tentative approval or disapproval at the January 23rd, 2024 council meeting.
I'm sorry, give me 1 second.
Yes.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
if I may, for that last item, what we're going to do, because it looks like it did not make it into your packet, and we apologize. So we are printing, right now Mr. Four is going back to the annex to print you those physical copies, so that way you can reference it. It's the same information he provided verbally, but we do want you to physically have it in front of you so you can feel comfortable making the appropriate recommendation. So
Okay,
if it's
so-
all right with you, we'll come back to that item in a minute,
So
if that's okay.
we should table it. Or we've already made a motion and a vote.
Yeah, y'all received staff's concerns verbally, but we just want to make sure that that matches what y'all get in hard copy.
So we wouldn't vote on it.
That's my
Don't
question.
need to vote on it again necessarily. We just want to make sure that at the same meeting, as soon as possible, that's rectified and that you all can have that.
Okay, so we will not need to make another vote? As long as,
Not
no,
unless
as
there's
long
further
as what's in front of
discussion.
us, everybody feels comfortable with and no one raises concern? Okay,
Yes, if you want to reopen it for discussion for a moment, but I don't think y'all need to act on it or do
okay.
anything different.
We will do that. Thank you, I appreciate it. Sorry, Lindsay.
All right. Okay. To continue with the staff analysis, so Since this request is at the direction of City Council, the applicant does not need to meet the requirements to apply, it's basically item A of the criteria for approval. And further analysis shows that the 2016 Comprehensive Master Plan does not consider the manufactured homes in any way or in any of the residential land use categories. Cibolo has established neighborhoods, such as the area in which the applicant property is located, where the predominant home type is manufactured homes. The proposed use of the property is a single-family residence in the form of a manufactured home, therefore it is consistent with the Comprehensive Master Plan. Furthermore, the development reflects this suburban and auto-oriented character, the proposed rezone respects the surrounding and existing uses and aligns with the development trends of the area, and is not that is not considered within the Comprehensive Master Plan. So the requested rezone is compatible with other uses in the nearby property and character of the immediate neighborhood, and the zoning district is suitable for the uses permitted by the district. In a nutshell, this does comply with, or does meet all the criteria for the rezone. So if you have any questions, staff is here to assist, and the applicant is also present.
Thank you, ma'am. I will now open the item 8C for discussion amongst the commissioners. Does anybody have any discussion on this item? Or comments, questions?
I'm just curious. I drove by there, and I've read over this, but maybe I'm not understanding it right. Are we wanting to put like lots of mobile homes on the property? Are they trying to like, what are they? Because I'm asking because while I understand a lot of the properties on that street, I'm not from here, so I'm going to say look like farmland. I guess I'm thinking down the road, because our neighborhood will be opening that road as another ingress towards our neighborhood. And so I'm just curious as to what the surrounding areas are going to be looking like according to the flume.
Yes. So the applicant is requesting, it's just one home for them to live in. Is that correct? You're also welcome to come up and speak. So as it is just for the one single family residential home. As far as we know, the surrounding uses are also manufactured homes. It's just an area that's the predominant home type is manufactured homes. And as I mentioned in the staff report, the future land use map calls it out as neighborhood residential, and quite frankly, this is no different from any other neighborhood residential. It's just the house type is manufactured homes.
Right. Okay, so I guess that's my confusion with if we're going according to the flume, then why isn't that whole area just rezoned? Because that seems to be what's going to be happening anyway. So why not, if we're going by the flume, why not just rezone that whole area?
So
I mean, wouldn't that make it easier so people don't have to waste their time and come here and ask to be rezoned?
I think that would have to be directed by council to initiate that kind of rezoning. We are just focusing on this one applicant because they are the ones that came forward requesting initially the conditional use permit to place the manufactured home on the property.
Okay. Got it.
I have just one question. Could you just please summarize for us why, or what the city council's directive was specifically about why they want this zoning instead of a cup?
They were contemplating that was not the original intention of the conditional use permit, of having that conditional use permit, to have it in all areas, in all residential districts. Originally, they were intending it for like larger properties. I guess there was someone and they were saying legacy properties, or people with acreage. Yeah, yes. That was the original intention of putting the conditional use permit in the land use charts, and as a process to be able to put an accessory residential structure on your property. And they never intended it to be able to use it in different in all residential districts. And that's why they preferred to have this come forward as a zone change instead of a conditional use permit.
And it looks like it's just this one spot that's potentially being changed.
Yes, it's only for this one lot.
That's not going to get us in trouble, is it? Okay.
No.
Just making sure.
It's the same density as the existing residential, the surrounding residential zones. It's the same density and the surrounding uses are compatible.
That's what I was going to say. It kind of conforms. If you're out in that
Correct.
area, you'll notice it really does conform. It's not the spot zoning word that we always get all heart attack over. No, I think that, and the cup thing, there was somebody that spoke at the council maybe last night that was talking about, can you have it not mixed use, but can it be SF2/MH1, or is it only one or the other?
It's only one or the other.
It is literally one or the other.
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, I don't have any other comments except for because it does flow with what's out there. I have no problem approving it. If it was right smack in the middle of, one of those developments, that Still Creek or something where there's 800 homes going in on SF4 or 6 or something, I think it'd be different. But I don't know. I have my opinions. Whoever has theirs.
And so, Ms. Huerta, you did a fantastic job of answering my concerns, and I will ask our planning department questions, and then use that in my studies to bring that back to discussion with the council, with the commission. And so I had asked, why is this not spot zoning? And you answered that, because the use is compatible. The other question is, okay, it certainly seems to me like we should be rezoning all of these surrounding properties that are similarly used in the same manner. We should be rezoning those. I don't want anything else to hold up this family from getting their home. They've been waiting on us for 90 days or more just to get your home. So I don't want anything else to hold them up. So I'm ready to approve this. I just had a lot of questions about what we were doing and why we were doing it. And then one other concern the council brought up was that one action begets another action. And so if you continue to use the cup to allow this, then being 250 parcels that are single family too, then there could be, a rash of cup requests. We could have 250 requests next year for cups for manufactured homes. My concern is we just need to have a big, my recommendation is we need to have a complete revisit of the zoning and the zoning efforts, the flume, all of these things. It needs to have that. But we don't need to be holding this family up from getting their home for that greater discussion. So as long as we're not spot zoning, as long as we're not harming anything else, we're not causing a domino effect by doing this in that specific area, then I'm perfectly fine with whatever it's zoned. This family needs to get their home. Now the concern, I would agree with you, Ms. Hubbard, that was one of my questions, because MH1 does allow 5.5 mobile homes per acre. So this could theoretically, that's a new word, theoretically, handle, let's call it 9 mobile homes, 9 manufactured homes in that 1.92 acres. And you can design a septic system that would handle that. So within the MH1, you're basically creating a mobile home park. I don't believe that's your desire, is it? You just want one home. So that was really the big concern, was actually with a cup, it was greater control for the family to get exactly what they were asking for. But in MH1, okay, we have to trust that this family only wants one manufactured home on their land that they bought and paid for. So I trust this family.
I'm sorry if I may,
Sure.
But they would have to replat. Like the way the ordinance is drafted, you're only allowed one per lot. They only have one lot. So they wouldn't be able to put more on there unless they replatted into additional lots.
I was going to ask that question. What other safeguards we have in
Yes.
place to prevent that from happening? Because it's a very valid point.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you for answering that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with the rest of the commissioners that, as stated, it matches surrounding and existing uses. So I have no issue with the approval of this. We still have two commissioners that may want to put any input in. Don't want to cut them off. All right, do you guys have anything you'd like to say? If not, then I can open the floor for a motion.
No, I agree with you. The other areas near them,
Thank you, sir.
they're the same usage. So I agree.
Okay. I will now open the floor for a motion on this item.
We'll give it a whirl.
I recommend approval to City Council for the rezoning of 1.93 acres located at 432 Tolly Road, legally described as Raby Estates, Lot 1, 1.93 acres from low-density single-family resident to SF2, from single-family resident SF2 to manufactured home district MH1.
Thank you, ma'am. No, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I have a question for our attorney on the next item. If we can just hold for just a second.
While she's doing that, if we could maybe take a look at, see if we need to reconsider from item 8E. I don't know how you notice that.
Okay, before we move on to the next item, I will be recusing myself from this item. I'm sorry. Is it the next item? No, it's not yet. Sorry. I will be recusing myself from 8E, so you're going to be taking over that one. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. We will move on to 8D. Discussion, action, and recommendation to the mayor and city council regarding a variance to Code of Ordinance Section 58.5 to allow a wall sign that does not face a right-of-way at 778 Cibolo Valley Drive.
Good evening. This is a sign variance for 778 Cibolo Valley Drive, Suite 107. It is owned by Endeavor Real Estate Group. It is for the Mod Pizza. It is represented by Patty Imbus of Britton Lift and Installation Services, LLC. So a variance to Code of Ordinances, Chapter 58, or the sign ordinance, is handled in the same manner as a zoning variance, with recommendation from the commission to city council. So this applicant property is located within the Borgfeld Market Shopping Center off of the corner of Borgfeld Boulevard and Cibolo Valley Drive. It is surrounded by commercial properties within the C3 and C4 zoning districts. The rear of the shopping center abuts the Walmart parking lot, and this is the place that this rear of the building is where the applicant is proposing to place a sign, and since that is not a right-of-way, the code does not allow that. So notice was published within the local newspaper on November 26th. Individual letters were sent out by mail to 9 properties within 200 feet of the site. To date, we have not received any responses back. So the public hearings are scheduled for tonight and January 9th, 2024, with approval of the zoning ordinance, approval or disapproval of the zoning ordinance, tentatively scheduled for the January 23rd, 2024 City Council meeting. So staff has found that the request does not meet the criterion for, or most of the criteria for granting the variance approval, as the situation is not unique to the applicant's property. So there was an error in issuing one of the signs within the same shopping district, or in the same shopping center. However, aside from that, the error in issuing similar signs in the area has now been discovered and does not warrant continuation. So the literal interpretation of this ordinance would not deprive the applicant rights commonly enjoyed by neighboring properties. And so while one sign was previously approved erroneously, all recent sign applications have been enforced in accordance with its requirements since the discovering and understanding of this section of the sign ordinance. Consistent adherence to the correct interpretation is now enforced. So the conditions are not a result of the applicant's actions, and the applicant would receive special privileges if granted the variance, as it departs from the standard sign ordinance requirements that have been continuously applied since the discovery of the section of the code. So if you have any questions, staff is here to assist.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So on my way here, I did a second look, and I thought I saw two signs on the back of that. There's two that are existing.
So the Buffalo Wild Wings was approved. I actually approved it in December of last year. And that was my mistake. However, the other one for the NextCare, that was only approved. I only approved the front sign. Their plans do not reflect that they would have a sign on the back of the building, and they have not called in inspections yet. And staff is working on handling that.
So that will be requested to be removed? Okay. That's my question.
And then I spoke with, I wanted to know what you guys, when I drove by, I noticed Blue Wave Car Wash. Can you give me some information on that?
So Blue Wave was built around 2017, and I did look. The site plan and plat calls out that road on
Borgfeld.
So, well, there's Borgfeld, and then there's like a road that goes in. It's a service road. It is called out as a right-of-way on the plat and the site plan. So it is in compliance.
Okay. That was just one question I had that I wanted to make sure we were being consistent because, yeah, I didn't realize that was considered a service road. Yeah. So I would consider that a driveway, though. What is the difference between a driveway and a service road for us non-engineer?
If it's dedicated as right-of-way, the city owns it.
So if the city owns it, that's what's considered a right-of-way?
It can be a private road also.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And in
Well,
this instance, it's a private road.
So
But it is designated as a road.
It's just marked differently on the plat. So say like it would be called out as like a 900 lot, but if it were like a city right of way, it would actually say like public right of way.
And it would have to meet city specs.
Yes.
I don't think that one is wide enough. Okay.
and is that applicant here at all? Or no, I met you. I don't know. Is anybody here from Odd Pizza?
Actually,
Or
no.
I guess the construction company?
No.
No. Okay. Because I just had a question here where it says to allow one standard lit LIT badge sign. Does that mean like actually lit up, like light?
It would be lit or illuminated is how we
Illuminated,
have it in
perfect.
the-
Okay,
it's
that's
how
what
it's
I
written
wanted
in the
to
code.
know.
Yes, it would be an illuminated sign.
Is the Buffalo? I don't think I've been by there at night. Is it also lit up?
Yeah, both, and the next.
And the urgent care one is as well. They're all lit up. Wow.
Would there be possibly a request? I don't know how it's done, so I'm just going to word this the way I think it would be worded. Is it possible that all those businesses could just get together and say, hey, let's get a big sign like they have on the other side for like Orange Theory and Taco Bell, like just have one big sign with all the companies on
That
them?
would be part of the sign program, and they were informed of that.
Okay.
It would just be.
So they just need to come together and kumbaya. Okay.
Yeah, because I think the developer of that actual property would be the one who would have put it in the plans to begin with. Like when we approved the one across the street, I felt like there was a lot of signs that they were putting up. Like for as small a businesses, it was like sign. And so I did notice that, but I don't remember seeing anything. So they did not actually apply for one for that whatever we're calling it, Buffalo
Not that I
Borgfeld
could-
Market.
yeah, the Borgfeld Market, no, I could not.
They did
find
not have anything
no.
like that, because I was trying to figure out that too, but okay. So they did not.
And in the future, if for some reason Buffalo Wild Wings were to move out of that area, whoever moves in cannot utilize the sign that's in the back, correct?
No.
Okay. All right.
And I just had another question because the area is so small. Like, wouldn't that impede like the sidewalk or anything? I mean, like, how would the sign even be put
It's
there?
on the back of the
It's on the
building.
back.
Oh, they
It's
mean
on the building
back?
itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Oh.
a picture, but it's hard to see in your packet.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay, got it. Okay.
So basically, when you're sitting in the parking lot of Walmart, you look over at that building, and it should be just a white facade, just a white building. And instead, you look up and you see Buffalo Wild Wings and you see the urgent care, and I think it looks very cluttered. I think it looks a little much. I don't think it needs to be there, because I know when you drive around, you know all those little shops are new. We all know Chipotle came in. We all like all these places are coming in. So I'm not really sure what the need is for, and that's why I was hoping the applicant was here to help understand. Are they just trying to have more marketing? Because I don't.
I believe in her letter, she stated that she just wanted to make sure that they were showing on the other side that they were there.
Huh.
Just-
Yeah. Well, I think it's already looking kind of cluttered, and I will be happy to see the Buffalo Wild Wings and the urgent care come down, because none of the other little places we have signs on all the corners.
The Buffalo Wild Wings one's not coming down, though.
Yeah, it was
Just
already
the
approved.
urgent care will come down,
Right.
correct? Because Buffalo Wild Wings was approved in
Right.
error. Okay.
Don't we have something in the? How did we get the AT&T 5G Eglinton pole down? Because that was also approved, and we were able to get that down. That was back like over a year and a half ago. That was something that was accidentally approved that shouldn't have been. So how don't we have something written that says if we err, like indemnify liability? Like, shouldn't there be something in there that says, oh, we made a mistake within so many days, we can go back because we're the city?
Whoopsies. The whoops clause, if you will.
Yeah, that's probably beyond the scope of this agenda item, but it's definitely something you can take up with staff on that if it's something we need to look at. Yeah. Sorry to be put a dampener on your discussion, but
But if you wouldn't mind, because I don't know that we were here when that was going on, if you could maybe just send us a note about what specifically that other project is, so we can try to look into that one as well. Yeah. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else you would like to discuss on this item? I'm glad that we discussed the next care, because I was in favor of, well, if you've got two, so I'm happy that we discussed that. Thank you. If not, I'll make a motion. I move to just give me just a second. I move to recommend denial of the request for variance of code of ordinance section 58.5 to allow a wall sign that does not face right-of-way at 778 Cibolo Valley Drive. Do I have a second? I did.
Second.
I have a motion as second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed. Thank you. And this next item, item 8A, is the one that I will be recusing myself from. That's what I said. What did I say?
A. You said A.
8E. I'm sorry. 8E. I'm all off my game today. And so I will be handing it over to the vice chair, or to the, vice chair.
We're going to get you some coffee.
Yeah, I would really love that.
All right. Okay, so item 8E, discussion and action and recommendation to the mayor and city council regarding a conditional use permit for 10833 IH10, legally described as ABS 134 Sir Jose Flores, 7.5100 acres to allow concrete asphalt batching plant temporary use. Thank you.
Yes, as stated earlier, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow a temporary concrete asphalt batching plant. I know you've seen a similar request previously. However, it is different in that This is a temporary use for the length of the contract with TxDOT for that project. It's not a permanent use. They would be limited in the time that they would be able to be there. At this moment, their contract would end not to exceed December of 2026. Notices were sent out, and it was published in the newspaper, in the Seguin Gazette, and the website. The Planning and Zoning Commission has options as far as a recommendation. You can recommend approval of the requested conditional use permit located at 10833 IH10. You can recommend approval with any additional conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission would like to require, or you can also recommend denial of the requested conditional use permit for a temporary concrete asphalt batching plant use. I know there was some questions about the previously located pond. There are, in your packet, you will find a permit by the Army Corps of Engineers of where the property owner was allowed to fill in the pond prior to the plant locating there. And we did look in the aerial photography and CAD, and it looked like it's all located within this property, within the limits of the applicant's property.
The complete pond?
The complete pond, yes.
I do have one question for
Okay.
you real quick. Earlier you stated that it would be the operating hours according to TxDOT. What are those hours?
Those are Monday through Saturday. Let's see.
A page that says commissioners, it says Weber in yellow letters at the top. And it says, because that was one of my questions too, Monday through Saturday, 24 hours, closed Sunday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that is quite outside of the normal scope, because normally we would be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for noise ordinance. So
Correct.
basically, does that mean, because I know we have some places that have to have double shift, but does that mean if the noise ordinance is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., normal businesses would close from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.?
So it's 7 to 9 during the week, and then 9 to 7 on weekends. And it's primarily geared towards outdoor operations. That's what's triggering it. And so within this, TxDOT has requested of Weber as their contractor to be able to pour outside of those hours, particularly some of the early morning hours, as those involved in construction are familiar, is usually requested. We did ask when we met with the TxDOT representative and Weber last week, because when you hear 24 hours, that's a little intimidating sometimes, right, just to hear that. And so we did ask, and we just received on Friday, so I don't think it's in this packet because we had to send it out before we received it, but in actual accounting that TxDOT approved as far as, okay, in 2023, how many pours did you actually do on the site? And they reported back and gave us a time of 31 days throughout 2023. So they are requesting permission to pour outside of that hours, and they would be entitled to it, but they have represented that the actuality is less than once per week if you want to average it that way when they're pouring at that site.
But that time can be in the middle of the night.
Yes, it could be, yes. I think some of their earliest ones represented maybe a 3 a.m. pour is the earliest they had in the summertime.
Yeah, those wee early morning pours are really common. Less traffic, concrete curing processes, all those sorts of things. So, but because they're pouring, we hear about the noises, the hammering within the, I guess you call it the mill at the concrete site, those sorts of things. Is this the existing site and all of the manufacturing tools that are there now? Or is this a new site? Is this a new company?
They are in operation already.
On that site?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what are their operating hours now?
They are, those are the hours that they might operate, the 6 days a week, and closed on Sundays. But as their letter states, only 37, they've only done that 37 days out of the year. They're not typically open
They're not
24
typically
hours.
actually doing the 24
Correct.
hours, but 37 out of 365 days.
One month out of the year
They are.
And it's primarily the summer months when it's really hot, so they're trying to get the work done before it gets hot.
That is unfortunate. You said something about it's within their right to be open 24 hours, though? No. Okay. I remember you said something. I was trying to catch that. Sorry.
Just if this conditional use permit were to be as presented, they would have the ability to operate outside of that hours, whether they take them advantage of that or not.
Just wanted to make sure because I'm like, well, I just didn't know if it was like a Texas state thing that superseded City of Cibolo, but no, they still have to follow City of Cibolo.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you stated that they're already operating and have been operating, so they're asking for a conditional use permit. What are they operating under now?
Well, they were unaware that they were within our jurisdiction or that they were going to require the conditional use permit when they located there.
So they were operating without a permit at all?
Correct. Yes.
Oh man.
I was going to say that's a really long time because some of those pictures go back to as early as June 2022.
Mm-hmm. And we went out and we were doing an assessment of the corridor when we discovered the use, and so we approached them and advised them that that this is what was required.
So the
to operate.
the concrete batching operations were not going on since 2021. There was an initial grading permit that had nothing with Weber associated on any of the permits or anything. It was the property owner who came in and said, well, there was a borrow pit on the property, and they requested just to basically restore it back, fill in the pond, and put it back to conditions that it had previously as far as the drainage going off in the southwest corner, things of that. So it was not specifically tied at that time. At least not to our knowledge, to the TxDOT project. The first time there was anything that might have tied into it was a permit request at the end of 2022 just for a construction trailer. We do receive those pretty commonly, and so that was going on. The batching operations with the plant being erected was not until earlier this year.
What we were looking at, though, were the pictures from 2022 where all the concrete
Right.
and everything is draining into that pond. So that's what we're looking at.
And I haven't seen those photos. I think only the commission has seen them, so unfortunately I can't respond to that at this time.
I had a question too.
Yeah, go for it.
So it sounds like first, I guess I'm gonna start with is the pond going to fall under that staff recommendation 9 of returning the property to its previous state? Would that include the pond, or did the fill-in happen before?
Yeah, the fill-in happened before. So they did go through the proper procedures to fill in the pond. They have and it's included in your packet from the Army Corps of Engineers. They got approval to fill in that burrow pit.
So that doesn't include like bringing back a pond?
No, no.
And then, because that tied into the second part of my question, which is like, what are the ramifications if they don't return it to, the before condition, basically?
That's a good question. They would, I get the only thing we could do would be give them a notice of violation that they have not returned the site as agreed upon by their permit.
Arms, guys.
Yeah.
I feel like that's always my question. What's the ramification for this not following through?
Yeah, I do see a discrepancy on dates. I thought I did. One part says temporary. On the Weber letter, it says end of project October 2025. And then I swore I saw somewhere else 2026.
Yeah, December of 2026.
So the November 29th letter of intent says October 2025, but you have something after November 29th?
It has to do with the contract length. So they were issued a contract with TxDOT that goes through October of 2026. Now they were proposing the contractor Weber to finish earlier, and that's why their letter of intent has an earlier date.
October 2025, but
Yes,
we are
but
possibly approving for all the way up until, can you give me the date again?
yes.
December 2026.
And we just
So almost
decided to
another
do it
year.
just till the end of the year, just in case. But their contract with TxDOT goes through October of 2026. They just proposed in their bid for the contract or their award, they said they were going to attempt to finish sooner. And so that's what's in the letter of intent.
Well, that's almost a year. That's what I'm saying. If this says October 2025, and you guys are saying December 2026, so that's
Yes.
a whole nother year.
Yes, and that goes with the letter from TxDOT because
Okay.
that's what the awarded contract states.
Gotcha. Okay. I do appreciate staff. Thank you for putting the comparisons together, because that was less homework for me to do. So thank you for that. That was very helpful. In case commissioners have some questions on previous stuff. I do appreciate that it looks like TxDOT is out there supposed to be supervising, checking in, holding them to certain standards. They have a really good system, it looks like, for some of the site remediation for the dust and all that kind of stuff. Now, the pictures that I see from 2022 kind of scare me, to be honest. So what is the city's role with TxDOT? Because one of my questions is, again, how do we make sure that they are doing and complying with what they say they're doing and how they're doing it? Like, who actually, do we have people that go in and check once we give these, permits? Does TxDOT turn reports in to the city of Cibolo because it's temporary? Like, what do we have to help control
Well,
this situation, the mess?
You want me to answer? Staff to answer? I was just, in general with enforcement, I mean, there's always a
Enforcement,
right to go inspect. If the city got a complaint that some condition wasn't being met, we could go inspect it, but you can also build in as a condition, more regular inspections or reporting, something like that. That can all be built in.
Because that's something that I would like to see is the actual enforcement. Again, I feel more comfortable because it does have TxDOT's name on it that they are keeping up reports and standards. But I don't know. That's just where I'm at on that.
I'm just, I guess I'm thinking about, I'm looking at this, but then I'm thinking about the pictures. And so how will that help her get that situation taken care of? Like, where does that start? Like, who would be responsible to sort of get that mess cleaned up?
Well, I don't remember seeing it look like that though, but I mean, like you said, I get so frazzled going out there trying to find my way that by the time I get there, do you have pictures from 2023 though? Because these are over a year old.
There were a couple in there from 2023.
Does it look like that right now, I guess is what they're asking?
There was one from October 2023 in there,
The pond is gone, right?
I think.
And that's where I'm also having.
If we do continue this conversation, we will need it at the microphone. If that's
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. So you need Michelle to come up. Miss Michelle, can you come up to the microphone? Because I'm also having issue, and I don't know if the rest of the commissions are trying to understand. I held on to this one because I'm trying to understand. Are you saying this corner is yours? What are you saying is yours with the pond?
From the street.
The street
and back towards the trees, it comes at an angle.
over here?
So,
Over here.
you want me to come up and show you?
Yeah, because if we're saying that it doesn't belong to you. That's where your survey was done by you?
Part of this is mine. They came and started filling it in. Mott did before Weber took over the owner. And then when I went out there and made them stop, So, then they didn't do it anymore.
And that's why
But
part of it.
it's not as deep
has
anymore,
water
but now,
still.
yeah, and now it's all grown up with weeds. It's a ditch. It's all brown and messy with trash.
Okay, thank you. I'm going
it's
to
a
pass
mess.
this down for anyone else to see the line that she made. Commissioners, what other questions or discussion do we have?
That was my only one, is just trying to reconcile what we're seeing and then what we're seeing, or what we're reading and then what we're seeing.
And Michelle, I do have a question for you if you want to go back up. So the pictures that you show where all the concrete, is that any of that is coming onto your land, or that's
Yes.
just what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's
So some of
floating
it does.
over the trash, to the edge, and weeds have grown because they partially filled it in. It's not as deep as it used to be, so it's kind of just overgrown and.
Do you, I don't
mess.
see it in here. You have a plat that shows that
I
that
have
is.
a survey. I don't have
your-
it with me. I could
Okay.
probably bring it into
That
the
would-
city
that
and
would
show
be
you, 'cause
really
I had
helpful.
A survey had to be done when I bought the property.
Sure.
Well, wouldn't
bank.
staff have access to that now, though? You guys have all the city records.
That's what we're saying. As far as the records that staff is able to access, we do not show the pond being on the adjacent property. It's contained on the Mott's property from what we're able to access right here, but we will certainly do more looking into that before it goes for the next public hearing, just to verify.
Okay, and then so we do have one more public hearing, and that is at council on January 9th.
Yes.
Okay.
So they'll be able to get that looked at.
Yeah, so,
They put a fence up in the beginning, but then they had to take it down when they realized, because they were trying to make it straight. And when I let them know that, showed them where the stakes were, that the property line kind of comes at an angle, they took the fence back down across.
gotcha. Yeah, okay.
So,
Okay. Any other questions for Miss Michelle? Commissioners?
Yes, I do. So are you living on that property
Yes.
right now? So
Yes.
that's the property you purchased and you're fixing up, and that's your
And I live
permanent
there,
home?
yes.
So I'd like to ask you, what is it like for you to live right there off of I-10 while they're building that? I mean, so you have a lot of noise already, you have a lot of dust. Is TxDOT doing anything to help you there?
no.
And so now they want to bring in this concrete batching plant here, right? And so it looks like they have all the equipment, that's required, right, for the remediation of all the dust and everything. But, so I have a question for staff now. So will this batching plant, they're not going to put up any landscape or fencing or anything unless this cup is approved, correct?
Well, if the cup is not approved, then the operations would not be allowed to continue.
Right, but
Yes.
they're continuing now, but they haven't done anything to buffer themselves from her property. They haven't done that. The pictures clearly state there's a lot of trash there. They haven't even shown any goodwill to clean that up. So if this is the beginning, is this what they have to look forward to for 3 years?
Right.
And so to address a few things, because a lot have come up here. So as far as any of the debris that's leaving the property, if there is anything that's a code enforcement issue, we can certainly follow up on that. We had not received any contact from the neighboring properties that there were issues. So now that we're aware of it, we definitely can take those avenues on that. So that's my commitment to you, that we will follow up on that portion of it. As far as the landscaping and fencing that is required in our UDC, typically that comes in when they're doing a site plan, and so the CUP would be considered, and then the formal site plan process. I will say some just audible changes, I would say, into the staff report is you'll notice that we did have it. Our understanding, what we had heard was that it was a vacant house and that there was no objection from residents. That's why we have these public hearings, to have opportunities to have that, the facts stated, so we will adjust that moving forward. But I hope that at least somewhat answers your questions on that, yes.
Well, yes, but at the same time, right, because they don't have do they have all this equipment in place already?
Yes.
They
It's
do.
operating,
It's,
yes.
Yeah, it's
it's
operating.
yeah, it's
So
all.
can I ask you, Michelle, so what is it like for you there with all the dust, with everything? Is the remediation that they're doing working for you?
They right now just mostly have vehicles and equipment, and they're in and out, they're dumping stuff in the pond, and they kind of stopped because they got to the edge where Now it's just a ditch, what's left of.
Right, but if they clean it up and all, so the question is for you, right? Your quality of life, so you're right there. When you're out there, do you feel that the wind is blowing all their dust and all their dirt to you? I
Yeah,
mean,
it kind of dirties the house.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
and we just don't go on that side of the house anymore, but that's where we like to be, because I have my porch out there, it was the view, it was everything, you know, but it's changed, we can't.
And that's unfortunate completely, but with the I to H10 corridor being, and this has been planned for, how long was the I-10 corridor? That's what, 7 years? I mean, it takes
6
years before they even start doing it. So I know we've had that comments from other people living out there and by just anyone off of Mott's Parkway, and I can't think of that little side street right now, that there's stuff coming in from the construction in general. So the stuff that concerns me right now is the hours of operation. I don't like 24 hours around the clock. If I were to make a motion to approve it, I would like to see some kind of conditions for the hours not being 24 hours, or I don't know. I don't think that's fair for anyone's well-being. I think that there needs to be a timeline put into place to get all of the fencing and the buffers and to get them in compliance with all of that. I would also like to have some kind of condition where the enforcement is checked on. And then, commissioners, as we're just having conversation, according to that you guys just had up, she is showing that part of that last corner pond was hers. That last picture that was up, if you look at it. Oh, well, see, this is different than the other one.
Yeah, the one that was just the.
So this is, yeah, there was a previous one. If you go back to the
zoning
let's
map,
see.
kind of.
Yeah, see, that one makes it look like what she's saying. But then the other one that you're saying it is not. So how do I know which one is correct here?
Yeah, we'll follow up on the survey, so we don't have that today.
Okay,
All
and you'll be
as
able to present that to council?
property.
Because I think that's really important, and that wouldn't be on the city anyways. That's nothing we could do about the ponds. That would be on Weber or Mott's or whoever, because the city didn't mess with her pond, right?
They did.
So she would need to speak with
so we
someone
would need-
else.
And we would need the applicant to provide us the survey. I know you said you have one.
Yes,
so that
I
we
can
compare.
bring it.
Perfect, we appreciate it, thank you.
did you
I
have
a couple of
something to
questions.
say?
Is there a possibility that they could relocate to another place?
That part.
No.
Somewhere with land around that they're not disturbing?
I think they
anyone?
tried to
And I had
pick
one
the
other-
best part that they could, though. If you look at that location, I mean, it's not like they're going to move it in town Cibolo, and they're trying to keep probably the heavy haul, and they're trying to keep their timelines, and it happens nationally. This is a common process for the progression, and so sometimes I know we have to give a little to get a little.
One
So
other thing, I did meet with TxDOT. They asked for a temporary easement so that when they get ready to make the lanes, that they were gonna need to take my fence down for whatever reason, you know, if they needed to. So when I met with them, he told me that what they're filling the pond in with is illegal, and there's something I can do about it, but he couldn't tell me who I could talk to or who I should talk to, and I didn't know.
that would
what
not
to
be
do.
planning and zoning, but I guess you would recommend going to the city. Who would she contact for any questions on that? Like if
the
she's-
pond is
if
lined
she's
or
trying to protect her property and herself, where do you recommend her?
They just said it was contaminating
the groundwater.
Well, that's not planning and zoning.
Oh no.
That sounds like EPA. Sorry. Good thing we still have those.
What would be a good resource then for her to contact through the city to get some questions that she might have or issues?
Or can somebody go out there to actually see it and talk to her?
I think what we would need first, because again, we haven't had a discussion before now, if we can exchange our contact info after this, and then planning, my department, we can be your point of contact to get you with code, with any other questions that you have, for sure.
Gotcha. This thing keeps falling down.
Okay, so and I know the concrete thing, they're not operating all the time because it's like 37 days out of the year. But like right now, while all this is happening, they're not allowed to operate, right? Until after January 9th, whenever the city
They
looks-
are being allowed to operate while they are pursuing a conditional use permit.
Okay.
So this microphone keeps moving.
Couple of questions, maybe a comment
Yeah.
or two.
Go for it.
is that Mr. Otto, and I apologize, Beck, thank you very much. I'll say that 3 times inside my head, and I'll try to remember it till tomorrow. So it sounds to me like there's 2 different issues here. First of all, the pond getting filled in is the landowner. And it was the filling of the pond was happening well before the concrete batch plant showed up. So that is a battle separate from the batch plant. Now, once the batch plant discussion happens, is that can they operate on the property, even the filled-in pond? You know, can they operate? And apparently, they feel like they can operate on that property, but we can't battle the batch plant because the landowner has previously filled the pond. Am I right? Or am I just muddying waters?
Is the question, if you can rephrase the
Right now, the batch plant isn't necessarily the problem. The problem is that the landowner has filled in the pond, and the batch plant doesn't own the property.
So the pond being filled in, it sounds like that's something that the property owner did, you know, on their own piece of land, probably to make it possible to do other projects, you know, requiring solid land, right, or graded land. So I think that's kind of a separate discussion. TxDOT picked this spot and started the batch plant. If the CUP is not approved and the plant needs to, shut down TxDOT, the TxDOT project's going to go on. They're going to get the concrete elsewhere. It'll just be, probably more costly in time and money. But the property will then be back to a filled-in pond. It'll be back to the vacant lot that it was prior to the
vacant lot that's a filled-in former pond.
And if anybody wants to come,
because it belongs to the landowner.
Yes,
and the landowner did that.
Yes. Are you asking if it?
So the cup. What I'm thinking right now, the cup isn't dependent upon the fact of the pond being filled in.
No,
it's just can
they're unrelated.
Can they put the concrete plant, the batch plant, there?
Yes, it's more of just historical background for y'all.
Yeah. So we really can't. It's being able to utilize the property for a batch plant isn't dependent upon whether the pond's been filled in.
That's correct.
No.
Yeah.
Correct.
Action for or against the cup is not going to impact.
No. The TCEQ and the Army Corps of Engineers would probably be a good resource for you to go to for that. So TCEQ and Army Corps of Engineers. This is all public documents on the agenda. So if you go to the city website, City of Cibolo, you'll have.
I don't believe the P&Z packets are posted.
There isn't anything from there though that will say the plans and just the basic agenda.
No, but I do believe Miss Walker just gave you her business card. So when you send us an email, we can shoot you back all those resources.
There you go. They can get you connected with that or Google away. So, okay. So I would like to put some conditions on it if it was approved. Commissioners, hours, getting it into code ASAP, having some, I think I've already said it, some enforcement. Does anybody have, so good?
If I may, just to make it easier on y'all making a motion, staff does have kind of just proposed recommendations in there.
Mm-hmm.
The way to do it, if you're trying to make a motion to approve with conditions.
I'm not making a motion right now. I'm just trying to talk to everybody to let them know I'd like to.
No, I understand.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
If you are to go that route, I would say maybe base it off that list. So anything on that list.
Yeah, right here under number 2
you
is usually where I start reading to keep myself straight. And then I would add in, well, those are the conclusions, though. Those aren't the conditions, right? I wouldn't have to say all of those, 1 through 10.
That's what I'm trying to keep you from having to read all those. If you want to say...
I thought that's already what you guys want to see done as the city in order to get them going.
Yeah, that's staff's recommended condition. So, for instance, it says can operate, the hours of operation aren't what you would like to see. You can say subject to changing that condition on this list. It's mostly also for staff's benefit because they're going to have to take what y'all say and create a new list to go to council.
Oh, I guess I assumed the conclusions were already kind of, so you're saying planning and zoning recommendation, we have 1, 2, and 3. There's approval with any additional conditions planning and zoning may require. You're saying I have to list this on top of what I want specific hours?
Yeah, so
What?
y'all can just throw this list out and say all new conditions if you wanted to do that. If some
Well,
of
no, I
these
don't
are
wanna-
conditions you like and want to keep,
Something
you can
as
just
written.
say,
Yeah, help me out.
Okay, so could she, for example, when the time comes, do the recommend approval? Where's the cup? With the additional conditions to change number 7's hours to be more specific.
That's exactly what I'm getting
and
at, yeah.
number whatever else, and then in addition add your enforcement.
yeah, if there's
Yeah,
anything
because
not
permits and
covered, you can definitely
inspections.
add.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
If there's anything not covered in this list that you want to add, by all means, add it. But if it's just modifying a condition they already have,
Yeah, number 4, permits and inspections. I'd like it to be a little bit more as far as like the enforcement, like you had mentioned, verbiage, that they check in, I don't know, every month. What is reasonable though with TxDOT and the way that paperwork process is? So like, how do we stay on top of that for the homeowner that
probably quarterly.
quarterly, probably?
Quarterly is reasonable. Yeah.
Quarterly.
Okay, so quarterly, what did you want to change in 7 specifically about hours?
That's what I'd like our commissioners to talk about. Hours of operation, who's comfortable with 24 hours and who's not.
I'm not.
24.
So it sounds like the consensus is not. So what is reasonable? Because I know we want to see progress happen on IH10 because we keep getting everything shoved into downtown Cibolo. And I know our dream, and we went to some of these meetings with Kimley Horn and all of them about pushing stuff out to I-10. So we have to make that happen. So that's why looking at the safety and well-being of everybody and everything, and council going to do their due diligence and the information they found out tonight, I think it can be something that makes it work for everybody. I really do. I just think it's going to take another bit of patience from Miss Michelle and then the city. But I want to see IH10 get completed. I do.
I have one. We're going to throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
See what sticks.
Okay, so what if it was like
For hours.
no, right, under hours, like no more than 5 times a month they can operate
24 hours.
from the 3 o'clock starting at 3 a.m. because I know that the summer hours we need it going earlier, but like what if it was something along the lines of like no more than a certain number of times a month you can have an earlier start time.
I appreciate that, but I also believe in the, quiet of peace and quiet enjoyment of my own property. And I don't want my neighbor mowing their lawn at 6:30 a.m. because I'm trying to sleep. So I don't want a concrete batch
she's
plant
got to
going
get up
on
and
at
go to
4
work
a.m.
like at
ever.
5 or 6. Like that only leaves her.
Yeah.
That
So I'd be
doesn't really
opposed to can't we just keep it with the city of Cibolo? Like, what does that do to the TxDOT if we put there where they can't operate 24 hours? You said it was only 37 times in.
Yeah, I think it was 31.
Do they have second shift or, because isn't there 3 shifts technically? So are they working first and second shift and then maybe that third shift is the one
Right,
that's
like
24 hours?
3 8-hour shifts.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if we do 7 o'clock, isn't that the sound? The sound ordinance is 7 o'clock.
It is on.
in the morning.
Okay.
That's too late.
So
7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is our noise ordinance.
But that's
Oh.
too late for like if you're doing summer lays, isn't it? For concrete?
I mean, because it's already usually 70, 80 degrees by that time in the summer.
That's what.
To cure concrete? What do you mean? Are you
Does
worried
the
about
te-
employees at the
right,
concrete
does the
place?
Does the temperature need to be
Oh.
a certain amount for the concrete to cure?
so on
Oh, he's got
hotter
some.
it is, the earlier you want to pour. But Mr. Otto has this aficionado on that.
yeah, so on a highway project, they're typically not working shifts. You're not going to have 3 8-hour shifts on a highway job. They're going to work when they can. And a lot of that especially on a highway has to do with traffic. When they're doing nighttime work, they're doing it because they have to shut down the highway in order to do what they're doing. Concrete is a long process. You got to pour it, you got to let it cure. So they're often going to do that at night. They'll do it on the weekends. I don't know what they're doing on I-10, but I travel 1604 all the time. Every time I leave Cibolo at 10 p.m., I'm hitting closed highways because they're working overnight, because that's when there's no traffic and they can be efficient about it.
What about?
And so if you do limit them from 7
Instead
a.m.
of
to 10
hours,
p.m.,
you
you are going to delay the TechStop project
So the whole
by a
so the whole
significant time
evening.
period.
Yeah, I mean, if they're operating, if they're getting their
Because
noisy
traffic
at night,
right? Because traffic. Is,
then to go to pour.
right.
So
'Cause
if they're
traffic is
done
clear
by
by
7,
and then they can
could be
pour all night long. Because you're right, they usually don't close it down till 9 or 10.
Yeah, closures usually they start setting barricades at 9, 10 p.m. the road's closed, and they try to have them back open by 6 a.m. It's typically the way that they do it. And with concrete,
success.
during the summer, you do need to start pouring concrete, at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, because when it gets too hot, the concrete heats up as it cures, and if it's 105 degrees outside, then it gets too hot and it starts to crack, and then you don't have good concrete.
Okay, that's to pour. So if they're at the batching, then it would have to be before
that.
So what time would they have to be
Does
doing
staff
the
have any
batching?
recommendation for times then? Like, you understand
So,
what we're trying to do, right?
Looking at what they needed to do for 2023, it looks like the earliest pours were at 3 a.m.
But when did they have to be batching at? Like, when would the work be being done at the site?
I wouldn't know that.
Are we talking that could be done at be done by 9 and then they're just keep
Can they pour,
churning?
right, can they pour earlier?
They're batching as they're pouring.
Oh.
Oh.
And so as they're batching it, it's going into the truck. And so you can't batch all day and then use that concrete at night. It's
But why
it's
wait
an
till
on-demand service.
why wait till 3 a.m.? Like, couldn't they start pouring at like 11 p.m.?
Well, if they're doing an overnight closure, they're going to start pouring at 10 p.m.
Well, that's what we're asking.
Right.
And so basically, they're going to be pouring all night long.
So they're pouring all night until 5 a.m. whatever.
And it depends on what they're doing. If they're doing pavement, they're going to do it all night long. If they're doing the Jersey barriers between lanes, they're going to probably do that during the day with a single lane closure.
Okay.
It's going to vary throughout construction,
Oh,
but they
man.
will have 24-hour operations.
Okay.
And those,
periodically.
Miss Michelle, do you mind coming up for 1 second? In the last year, you've been residing in this home? You've been sleeping there overnight?
3 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the last year, have you been woken up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m., anything?
Woken up with just their trucks. There is no concrete being poured that I know of right now, other than the filling into the pond.
Just the
You can do it
construction of
yourself.
IH-10.
Yeah.
So there's nothing we can really do about
But
that.
I'm concerned about breathing in the asphalt and the smell and the sound.
Yeah, I do understand that, and I'm trying to figure out, hopefully with more information going to council, then they can have a little bit more information at their hearing to
It
help.
just makes it really hard to make a decision because this is 3 years that she's going to have to tolerate when we don't even know. Is it going to be all night? Is it going to be once a week, every day? For, in the summertime, you said that's going to be when it's the busiest. So is it going to be every day during the summer? We have no idea what we're putting her through for 3 years. So
So when the wind blows, will that stuff blow and get on my house?
Well, you're already getting all this stuff from IH-10, though, is what I'm saying, and that's where I'm not trying to be inconsiderate, but what I'm saying is that there's only so much we can do as a planning and zoning commission, because the construction on IH-10 isn't going to stop for 3 years.
No, and it can't, and dust happens. They try to contain as much as they can, but say, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Otto, there's like 5 companies that build highways that are, there may be, 15, but say there's only so many companies that are building highways.
Right.
And they all have contracts for multiple locations throughout the state, throughout the U.S. And so they're meeting contract dates wherever that project needs to have that date met. So if we tried to say, okay, for the month of July, well, they can go 24 hours. Well, then we're affecting 17 other projects throughout the state of Texas of them trying to come in and say, okay, we can only work these hours in the month of July within the city of Cibolo. Therein lies another difficulty. So it truly is. And like the text I said, it was only 37 days. Well, that's because the other whole bunch of other days that those crews were on other road projects in other parts of the state working on roads, because they'll pour, let it cure. Then they have a crew that comes in and ties the steel. They have a crew that pours all the base for the overpasses, all those sorts of things. And so we don't have the construction calendar for each portion of I-10 to be able to try and work this out. I'm very, very sympathetic with you. Absolutely, very sympathetic. But it's how do we make it all capiche?
So will
Yeah.
this fumes or whatever, is that going to affect our health? I mean, it's just all this stuff.
It is, and that's something I think I would love to see you or anyone else from commission or anywhere go to council on the 9th. I think that's something that has to have more discussion then. So thank you for your time coming in tonight, and we'll see you, I'm assuming, in a couple weeks.
Yes, and we have also requested that a representative from TxDOT and from Weber also be there at those additional public hearings.
That would be
Yeah.
very helpful
Yes.
for Ms. Michelle then. Okay. Okay, so I am inclined to make a motion for approval with the staff conclusions 1 through 10. Does anyone, with the additions, I'm not making the motion right now, but basically we're under 4, if my commissioners can pull that up, having something that says quarterly evaluations under permits and inspections. I think decibels or hours is kind of out under number 7. I'm not really sure how to help with that. So maybe TxDOT and whoever's showing up at the January 9th can help with that. I thought I had one more, but I didn't write it down. I don't know. So unless anyone else has more discussion, I'd like to make a motion. Any more discussion? Okay, so I would like to make a recommendation for approval of the requested cup for a concrete asphalt batching plant temporary use, big words, temporary, for a property located at 10833 IH10, legally described as ABS 134, Sir Jose Flores, 7.5100 acres, with additional comments, with additional conditions being the staff conclusions 1 through 10 be included for conditions. Item number 4, under permits inspections, we would like to add that there are quarterly evaluations. And I think that's all I can do. Does that cover me, sir, for a recommendation?
Great. Second.
And I have a second. All in favor? We have a motion and a second.
Aye.
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 Aye. So all was all aye? Okay, motion passes. And we will look forward to, commissioners, you know we can go to public hearings as well to make sure we stress to council, this is why we approved this, this is what we were thinking, this is what we need help with for the community.
Thank you very much for taking care of that. Thank you, commissioners. Item number 8F, discussion, action, and recommendation to City Council regarding a proposed amendment to Article 13, Use Table, Section 13.1, Residential Uses for the City's Unified Development Code, UDC, to remove the allowance of a conditional use permit for a manufactured home from the SF2 single-family residential zoning district.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So this item will look familiar. You discussed it at your last P&Z meeting. You asked to table it for us to go do a little bit more research, particularly how it relates to any property owners who have an existing manufactured home on their property and what sort of protections might be available for them should they need to replace that manufactured home in the future. And so we did go ahead and present this at public hearing number 2 at the City Council last night, but there was no action because they were waiting for a recommendation from P&Z, so it'll go back to them at the January meeting, depending on how tonight goes. We did reach out to our city attorney's office for some information as far as what type of provisions are there. They did point us, and I put it within your packet, the part of state code that does allow for manufactured homes to be replaced by right. So there isn't anything that the commission would need to recommend a wording change unless you would want to limit it to only being able to be replaced one time. The way it is right now, it can be replaced multiple times without any need to change the ordinance. If the commission still does want the ordinance to be changed to have very specific wording, we can certainly go down that path. Would just like to let you know, because that would be affecting a different part of our UDC, particularly it would probably affect Article 4 on non-conforming uses and structures. We would basically have to start the process from the beginning again and renotice, do the public hearings, and go through. Which we can do, but again, as far as if you're looking for protections for property owners that they can rebuild, currently with state law, it already protects them for them to be able to replace it multiple times. You would only need wording if you want to limit it to just one-time replacement.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Do you have something else?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I know.
She's here to answer any questions that we may have. So I will open the floor for any discussion on this item. I'm glad you guys found that statute, or
Yes.
I think somebody brought it to the council meeting or something, or
We did have it in the staff report yesterday
Okay.
as well
Yeah.
when we discussed it. Mr. Beck, I believe, was actually the one from our attorney's office who was able to find that.
I'm glad. That was our biggest concern last time we discussed.
Yes. No, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other concerns on this item? This proposed change that we would like to talk through? I think that was the biggest item that we had discussed. And now that that's addressed by existing statute, that's good. Yes, sir.
So my only concern I would have with this is why aren't we removing it from SF1, SF3, SF4?
I think it's, sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. As far as a CUP, well, it's not in SF4 and those other districts. It's a CUP for agricultural, SF1 and SF2. I can't speak on behalf of council. I know many of you have probably had discussions with your own council members to get their feelings on that and their reasoning. As Ms. Huerta had said, part of what was shared publicly last night was that the SF2 district, through different rezonings over the year, has been incorporated maybe into more subdivision type residential areas, and that the intent when it was put in was not to have manufactured homes in subdivision-like areas. And so SF1 and agricultural, because those are more rural, larger lots, there maybe isn't as much concern about manufactured homes being on those, which is why we were directed just to look at SF2.
Makes sense.
Yep. Does that satisfy your question?
It's an answer.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. If there is no further discussion on this item, I would entertain a motion. Does anybody have one? I thought she was about to say something. her mouth open. I'll make the motion.
This one's missing it. Usually it'll say.
Yeah.
Usually it'll say, like you just read on the last one, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. Yeah. That's okay. I can make it up. It was tabled. You are correct. I'm sorry.
Say that again?
Yeah, louder.
You're recommending approval of recommending the city council approval of
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of how I was going to say. Okay. I move to recommend to City Council and Mayor the approval of the ordinance as written.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
One opposed.
Thank you. We'll share this when the council hears it again on January 9th.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is city engineering training.
Yes, so you already got a sneak peek of Mr. Otto on some of these earlier items, but we did request As we've been getting requests from our commissioners on different training opportunities that you like, of course we can't get through all of them at the same time, but we are trying to filter through, get some different speakers. I'll talk about our next one that's going to be lined up later on during my updates, but we do have Mr. Chris Otto, our city engineer here, and in particular we had some questions about Lomar, but he's going to give an overall drainage and other related items presentation.
Great. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Good evening. Thank you. So I am Chris Otto with Collier's Engineering Design. I am your city engineer and floodplain administrator. And that's kind of the original request was Clomars and Lomars. I wanted to go a little deeper into just drainage in general and what we look at, why we look at it. And Lindsay, can you drive? Thank you. There's going to be a lot of clicking. My EIT like to have the things fly in, so the purpose of what we're doing, or the purpose of the drainage reviews, is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Cibolo from flood risk. I do want to note flood risks don't just come from the floodplain. Localized flooding is actually where most flood damage occurs. And so we do take a holistic approach to the way we review things. Next slide. What we review, we look at on-site drainage, regional drainage, the FEMA floodplain, and then Atlas 14 rainfall frequencies are the four major things. Next slide. And I talk fast, so feel free to stop me and ask questions. For the on-site drainage, we're looking for a thorough analysis of the topography, the soil characteristics, existing drainage patterns entering and leaving the site. We consider the location of water sources, rivers, lakes, and then of course floodplains. The site that I have on the screen is a random site that I picked in Cibolo. I don't think there's any proposed development on it, but it was a good example of a lot of different characteristics that we look at. This site's got FEMA floodplain going through it. The piece of it's most likely to develop is going to be the north portion of the site. When they do that, they're most likely going to try to reclaim that floodplain because it's valuable land. And so we look at the water on this one in particular. I don't know if you can see the contours or not. There's water coming onto the property from the north. And so we'll look at their on-site grading to make sure they're accepting that water. Under the Texas Water Code, you do have to accept water that is naturally draining onto you. And you cannot redirect your water onto somebody else. And so those are some of the things we look at for the on-site. Next slide. For the regional, and this ties, or I'm sorry, detention. On-site detention is required in Cibolo with some caveats. Detention, the allowable discharge that they can release is 80% of pre-project conditions. So if the site is discharging 10 CFS under existing, then when they put in their pond, they have to reduce that to 8. The allowable methods that we accept when calculating this is the modified rational method for small sites and the unit hydrograph method. And as I say that, I'm like, that is very engineering speak, and I'm sorry. It sounded great when I typed it up for my EIT to put in here, but I realized that maybe not. I'm sorry, yes, CFS is cubic feet per second.
Go back and make sure you don't say all of those lovely acronyms, at least the first time so we hear it.
I try really hard, but I am an engineer, so I throw out a lot.
We'll call you out. Don't worry.
So the modified rational method is a very simplified method of calculating runoff. It's based on the rational method, which just determines the peak discharge coming off of a site. There is no timing component to that. It's just 10 CFS. You get a number, that's it. With a unit hydrograph method, there are multiple unit hydrograph methods, but it creates a hydrograph which shows at time 0 or 0 hours, there's 0 CFS. At 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, so you see the flood wave go up. You hit a peak, usually just after 12 hours, and then you see it come back down. The unit hydrograph method is my preferred method. My engineers aren't allowed to use the modified rational method for anything because I like the unit hydrograph method because it takes into account the timing of the storm. When you've got multiple areas coming into a site, especially when you've got floodplain, that floodplain may take 45 minutes to 3 hours to not in Cibolo. In Cibolo, it's probably 45 minutes to an hour and a half, 2 hours for the main channel to peak. The site is going to peak in 12 hours and 5 minutes, maybe 12 hours and 20 minutes.
So are those based off of a storm of record? The timing?
So I'm going to get to that in a little
Okay.
bit, but with the
sorry,
rainfall
jump ahead.
data, we have 24, actually more than 24 hours, but we have rainfall data with 5-minute intensities, 15-minute, half hour, 60-minute, 2 hour, 3 hours, 6 hour, 12 hour, 24 hour intensities. And from that, you can create a rainfall graph. It's a hyetograph.
Okay.
I had to say the word. I couldn't stop myself. Over that 24-hour period, rain typically starts slowly towards the middle of the storm. It's going to get more intense, and then it gets less intense as the storm goes on. Basically, your storm comes in slowly, a little bit of rain, a lot of rain, and then it tapers off. The unit hydrograph method takes that into account, and it takes into account the timing of everything. And so when I say detention is required, with caveats, it's when you use a unit hydrograph method that sometimes detention's a bad thing. I'm actually working on a project right now in the city of Fair Oaks. Providing detention actually causes an increase to flooding downstream. So we're actually on that one, we're free flowing the site because it actually helps the situation more. We have approved a couple of those in Cibolo over the last year. But I think I'll get into that some more in a minute. Next. I talk fast and I tend to ramble, especially when I'm talking about drainage. So again, stop me. On the regional drainage, we're looking at upstream impacts, downstream impacts, and detention not always being the best solution. There are two components to drainage. You have the hydrology, which is the quantity of runoff from a storm event. That is impacted by the amount of impervious cover. And then you've got the hydraulics. The hydraulics is how deep and how fast does that water flow down the stream or the water course. The hydrology is going to have potential downstream impacts. The hydraulics will have upstream impacts. So back to this site, the floodplain is the shaded blue area. When you try to reclaim that floodplain, you take away conveyance from the floodplain. When you remove that conveyance, it's going to want to cause water to back up, which will cause an increase to the depth upstream if you don't do it properly. When you put down impervious cover, you're going to generate more runoff from the site, which is where detention comes into play. You try to mitigate that increase. And that causes impacts, could cause impacts downstream. On this site in particular, I have not run any analysis, but just my gut and based on 20 years of experience, I would not propose detention on this site because it is immediately adjacent to the floodplain. There's something called the 10% rule. It's not really a rule, it's a rule of thumb. If your project area is less than 10% of the overall drainage area going to a point, then your project is less likely to have an impact on the downstream flow rates. And that's when providing detention can actually make things worse. And so if we had a pre-development meeting with the developer on this site, I would ask them to use a unit hydrograph method and verify that their detention pond doesn't make things worse. And because sometimes, again, it is better to just let the site free flow.
I have a question. If, okay, on this image, like you said, you wouldn't put anything adjacent to it because, or you wouldn't clog it because then everything would flood, right? Is this graphic indicative of how the water or how that area would flood when the rain is full on coming in? Like you said, it comes in slow, then it really pours, and then it slowly, tapers off or dissipates or whatever. Whenever we see these graphics in our plans, is that the full on flooded, rain is here, it's all happening, or is that just, hey, this is a floodplain?
I'm going to get to that in the next slide.
Okay, go.
So FEMA floodplains, technically it's the special flood hazard area, is the area subject to flooding during a 1% annual exceedance probability storm event. We call it the 100-year flood event because it takes too long to say the other thing. FEMA has gotten away from calling it a 100-year storm event because people love to shout, I've had 2 100-year storms in the last 10. And in our region, 98, 2002, 2004, 2007, and 2009,
That's why I
8.
called it a storm of record.
Those were all historic storm events. Some of them were 100 years, some were 200, some were 500, some were 25, depending on where you lived. 98 was a 100-year in, I believe it was Leon Creek, and the San Antonio River, which is 10 miles away, it was a 25-year. It depends on the watershed characteristics, how wide it is, how long it is, how much impervious cover there is. We define a 100-year storm as 12.2 to 12.5 inches in a 24-hour time period. But it really depends on where you live. On your neighborhood street, a 100-year storm would probably be something on the neighborhood of 8 inches of rain in 20 minutes. 8 inches of rain in 20 minutes on Leon Creek, and I'm using Leon Creek because it's bigger than Town Creek, and Town Creek's like a medium size. But Leon Creek, 8 inches in 20 minutes would not even get it to flow. It's too quick, too fast. Water cannot concentrate into the stream before it stops. And so I hear that all the time. For 20 years, I've heard residents tell me, I've lived through all these 100-year events, and I'm like, your property has never seen a 100-year event since you've lived there. It's hard to explain that, but so, and again, on here I mentioned again, most flooding occurs outside of the floodplain. I don't remember the statistic on it. I'm going to make it up, but it's somewhere around 60 to 70% of flood damages actually occur outside of the floodplain.
Make sure I get this right, because this is like always a big contentious piece when we're approving or disapproving things. Okay, so when you're saying that it happens outside of the floodplain, is that, again, just our normal rain coming through, we get 5, 10, 15 minutes of hard rain, and then it takes off? Or are you talking about when really, really big floods come?
Both. So, for example, my parents, when growing up, our house was 6 miles from the closest floodplain. Our home flooded 3 times when I was a kid, because the bar ditch in front of our house didn't have capacity, and there was maybe 50 acres that drained to it, but it would jump that bar ditch, go through our front yard and into the corner of the house. We were 6 miles away from a floodplain. And that's typically what you see. In San Antonio, and again, I'm gonna talk about San Antonio a lot because I worked there for several years in their drainage department. In 2007, I was at the city of San Antonio. That was a 25-year event that hit the Almost Park area. Not Almost Park, Woodlawn Lake. They had 3 feet of water flowing down the streets on Donaldson Terrace. And a bunch of homes flooded. They weren't in the floodplain, but it was a short, very intense storm that flooded the streets but the lake itself didn't actually flood. And so that's it. We do get a lot of what they call microburst, where you get very intense rain for very short periods of time. I designed a project over by Mark Twain Middle School. That one, the 25-year storm is what we designed it for. 25-year storm was 6.5 inches of rain in 45 minutes was the design storm. 4 weeks after we finished the project, we got 6.5 inches of rain in 45 minutes. Perfect 25-year storm right after we finished construction. Worked exactly as we intended, except for one pair of inlets, because the contractor left a sheet of plywood in a junction box. So I don't know where I was going with that.
No, I just want to make sure, because we have had some requests come through where their developers want to build near a floodplain, but they're like, no, you're out there, the houses will be outside the floodplain, like here's where it is, this is where the houses are going to be. But if what you're saying, well, it's obviously true, you're here, what you're saying is true, then if that had been approved and they built those houses, they would get flooded, like automatically, because they were literally like the plane was here, houses were here.
So we do get to that in another slide. You're one slide ahead of me the whole time.
Just so proactive. You're not talking fast enough for us, Chris.
Sorry.
We're just teasing. We're just teasing.
So when we do the flood models, we do the hydrology, we do the hydraulics, and we can calculate what the 100-year floodplain is theoretically going to be. In the city of Cibolo, finished floor elevations have to be set 2 feet above the 500-year effective floodplain, or 2 feet above the Atlas 14 100-year floodplain. I'll get to Atlas 14 in a second. And when I say most of the flooding occurs outside of the floodplain, that's in older areas where drainage wasn't really considered. Up until the mid-90s, drainage regulations were pretty loose. We knew where drainage went, but you put a pipe in the ground saying, we took care of it. Often we find out in those older areas that pipe was designed for a 1-year event instead of a 25-year event or a 100-year event, and homes in the area flood all the time. The bridge at Town Creek is a good example. I mean, that crossing couldn't handle anything, and now we're putting a bridge in to contain the 100-year event, the Hagerville at Town Creek. So something else I wanted to point out about the floodplains. Again, a floodplain is a FEMA designation related to flood insurance. The floodway is that red hatched area you see in the middle. That is a primary conveyance of floodwaters. Outside of the floodway, in many jurisdictions, technically you can reclaim up to the floodway without doing a flood study. I don't allow that in the city of Cibolo. I make everybody that wants to touch a floodplain do a flood study. Just because FEMA says you can fill doesn't stop your neighbor from suing you for doing it, because the way the floodway is determined is anything, if you flood outside of the floodway, the maximum allowable increase is 1 foot in base flood elevation. In Cibolo, we go for 0 rise. You cannot increase the floodplain onto somebody else's property. And so floodways, they're kind of an antiquated thing that was started back in the 70s and 80s when computers took 2 days to run a flood model. Now I can run a flood model in about 3 seconds. So that's floodways. I don't like them.
I feel like it's important to highlight what you just said. You can run a flood report. Is that what you called it, a flood report?
A flood model.
A flood model in a couple seconds.
Well, when you click run to get results, depending on the model, anywhere from 3 seconds to 2 minutes.
Okay, so it's taking under 5 minutes for these engineering firms of these developers to run these required drainage
Well,
and flooding reports.
To run the model, but to put the model together is a whole nother thing.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
But if most of the developers use engineers that are familiar with this area and do work in the area, and so they have all of that information already loaded in their model.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely. I mean, it's not a common occurrence that they hire somebody from, the north, like North United States, that they don't know anything, and they've got to get all that together. They try to save money by things like doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got one more question.
Okay.
Okay, you said a floodway can be determined by, you said something about zero.
Zero rise.
The floodway is a FEMA designation where a model has been prepared that show if you fill the blue outside of the red, the maximum increase in water surface elevation would be 1 foot. Again, back in the early 80s, it was determined that a 1 foot rise was an acceptable rise. But again, if you allow a 1 foot rise on a neighbor's property, that doesn't stop the neighbor from suing you for putting more floodwaters on his property. So we targeted a zero rise, 0.00 feet for all the floodplains in Cibolo if someone's going to touch them. If someone is going to touch a floodplain and do physical modifications, whether it be fill within the floodplain, adding a culvert or a bridge, or excavating the floodplain, we do require them to do a conditional letter of map revision or a CLOMAR. A CLOMAR is, they would submit a flood study to the city. I would review it, make comments, ultimately, hopefully approve it, and then they submit it to FEMA. When you submit it to FEMA, it's basically asking permission. It's not really a permit, but it's, if I did this, would you change the maps? Which is exactly what I have on the slide. And so once they get their CLOMAR from FEMA, then we can issue them a floodplain development permit to physically construct the improvements within the floodplain. A CLOMAR process is expensive and time consuming, which is why they all fight us on it 100% of the time.
When you say expensive, what does that mean? 5,000, 100,000, what is expensive?
A typical CLOMAR, you're going to pay $8,250 to FEMA just for the pleasure of having them review it. And you're going to pay your engineer
$10K?
$30,000, $40,000, $50,000, up to $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, depending on complexity.
Really?
I would say most of what you've got in Cibolo is not that complex. Probably $40,000, $50,000 range. So it is a chunk of change. And when you're talking an individual landowner that has that legacy property that their family's owned for 150 years and they want to add on to their house, I'm not going to make them do a flood study because it's not fair to someone who's just trying to live their life in their house. We'll work with them in those cases to elevate it to the 500-year floodplain to avoid the flood study, or we'll find something that makes sense for them. But a developer coming in that's going to put in 200 lots, yeah, you can afford to do a flood study. So once the CLOMAR is approved by FEMA, then we will issue a floodplain development permit.
How long does it take FEMA to approve those?
That's a good one. FEMA approvals typically, if you're really lucky, 6 months.
I figured it was long.
More than likely, you're probably looking at 9 to 12 months to get FEMA approval. And it really just depends on the reviewer that you get. Some are good, some are bad, just like anything else. So after a year, they finally get their CLOMAR approval. We give them a floodplain permit. They go out, they construct the improvements. Then they have to do a letter of map revision, or a LOMAR. That's where they actually do the models for what was physically built in the field. During construction, things change. Contractors run into issues. They overcut, they overfill, they do whatever. So we'll typically make them do an as-built survey to verify what was built, update their models to reflect that. And then we go through the whole CLOMAR process. It's the exact same process without the C.
Without what?
Without the C.
Okay.
Yeah. They submit it to us, we review it, comment, approve, then they submit to FEMA, and they wait another 12 months. FEMA approves the LOMAR. Once they approve it, then there is a 90-day appeal period where the applicant will notify all affected property owners of the changes to the floodplain. And those property owners will have 90 days to submit an appeal or protest to FEMA. An appeal or protest has to be backed by an engineer. You can't just say, I don't think this is right. You have to have an engineer sign and seal a report saying this isn't right, this is why it's not right, and this is how it should be fixed.
So that appeal, that period for the appeal, that happens after the infrastructure and the houses and everything is already built, because you said that you have them do an as-built survey. So they're going to
Yes.
appeal existing construction?
Well, so I didn't mention it, but during the CLOMAR phase, here in the last couple of years, FEMA has started requiring notifications at a CLOMAR also.
Okay. That makes more sense to me.
There is no appeal period during a CLOMAR.
Okay.
But you have to notify property owners, which give the property owners a chance to go to the floodplain administrator and say, hey, what's going on here? And they can at least address it during construction. I'll be honest, 20 years I've been doing this. I've sent out thousands of notification letters. I've been contacted by 3 that were actually curious what was going on. And I've never had anyone submit an appeal or protest. I've had a couple threaten to, but when they found out they needed an engineer, they backed off.
Does a LOMAR cost as much as the CLOMAR?
Yes.
Okay.
So they pay that twice.
So it's
that
like
Basically.
$200,000
$200K?
when everything's said and done.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, a LOMAR, it's the exact same thing as a CLOMAR without the C. The process, everything's exactly the same. Next slide. Y'all look at me like I'm talking too much. I've already kind of covered this a little bit, where we talk about the 2 foot above the 500-year floodplain or 2 foot above the Atlas 14 floodplain.
Here.
Atlas 14 has been around for a few years now. Atlas 14 is the rainfall data, Atlas 14 volume 11 specifically, is the rainfall data for the state of Texas. Prior to Atlas 14, we were using rainfall data that was done back in the 60s. I think it was 1900 to 1960 was the rainfall data that we had, and we extrapolated to a 100-year event. Now with Atlas 14, we actually have 120 years worth of rainfall data to determine what a 100-year storm really is based on a statistical analysis.
Statistical analysis on
All of the rain
on
gauges
cities
throughout all of Texas.
growing and grounds being moved and shifted.
No, just based solely on weather and patterns.
Okay.
And so there are hundreds of rain gauges across Texas, and they've got, depending on the gauge, the good ones, every storm event, going back to 1910, 1908, they've got every rainfall data with, 5-minute data or 15-minute data, half-hour data. Again, depends on the gauge. But the NOAA, and don't ask me what NOAA stands for because I don't remember. The weather people.
I got it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got it. I got it.
I do too, but I can't. National Organization.
Oceanic Atmosphere
Yeah, that's it,
Association or
yep.
something like that. They did a statistical analysis based on all these rain gauges. They took years to do it, and they came up with all of these tables that tell us how much rain's going to fall during a 100-year storm in 24 hours. And they also included the 1-year, 2-year, 5-year, 10, 25, 50, all these different storms. So when I say Atlas 14, that's what I'm talking about. It is a rather big deal because the 24-hour storm prior to that, depending on where you were in our area, ranged from 10 to 11 inches per hour. With Atlas 14, it went up to 12 to 14 inches in 24 hours. So about a 20% increase in total rainfall. But what we found was while the total rainfall increased, in many areas, the peak discharge decreased because the rain didn't peak as quickly, in the mid-storm. It was a more gradual increase, and not increasing as high in the peak intensity. So in some areas with a 20% increase, we see a 10% increase in peak discharge. Out in the hill country, 20% increase in rainfall actually resulted in a 10% decrease in rainfall or in runoff. So that's what Atlas 14 is. Cibolo adopted the 500-year or Atlas 14 rule back in 2019, I believe it was. And the 500-year was adopted because studies are expensive. And to update the hydrology and hydraulics for Atlas 14 is very expensive. And so the 500-year was given as an option because it was a rough approximation of what we thought Atlas 14 was at that time. Since then, next slide, the San Antonio River Authority has been working on new flood models for all of Bexar County, which obviously includes the San Antonio River. And so what the River Authority did is they went out and they got grants from FEMA to study basically all of the tributaries that drain into the San Antonio River, regardless of jurisdiction. Guadalupe County is not in their jurisdiction. When I found out they were doing models, I was like, what are you doing? This isn't your playground, get out. But then they explained to me what they were doing, and I was like, thank you. So they have they have prepared these Atlas 14 studies on many of the streams in Guadalupe, at least the western part of Guadalupe that actually drains into the San Antonio River. And they've gone through a QC process on these. They are now considered best available models. They are not FEMA models because the FEMA models are still the effective models that were done in the 90s. But they are best available. They're based on Atlas 14. These are what I'm using to regulate the floodplain right now, in addition to the effective. And it's based on better rainfall data, better ground data, better topography, better modeling methodology. They're just much better models. Some of them are considered limited detailed studies. In a limited detailed study, they may have ignored culverts. They didn't go out and survey all the culverts. They may have ignored them. Or they may have approximated bridges using LiDAR data or aerial topography. So they're not perfect, but they're better than what we had. And it's something that I can give to consultants and say, here's the best available model. This is your new baseline. Fix it as appropriate based on the fact that it is a limited detail. And then that's what they can use as a baseline, which again helps the developers because they're not having to start from scratch or pull up a study from 1990 that's on paper. These new best available models are currently under review at FEMA. They will become the effective models in 2 to 3 years, hopefully. Every time I ask for status on these, I am told 2 to 3 years. I've been asking for status on some of this stuff in San Antonio for 2 years now, and it's still 2 to 3 years. But we are using them to regulate floodplains. We are also still using the effective. We're using the worst case between effective and Atlas 14. What I have on the screen right there is Town Creek at Hagerville Road. The solid blue hatch is the effective floodplain as currently recognized by FEMA, and then the cross hatch is the Atlas 14. And so you can see in some cases, the new Atlas 14 has gotten wider. In other cases, it's gotten narrower. In all cases, it's wrong. There's been major excavation done on Town Creek at Hakerville Road, which was not captured when they did this study. And so when that bridge is complete, the consultant for that project is going to have to do a LOMAR to update the flood maps with, as-built conditions. And that's what I got.
I have questions. Okay. So, are there any areas of Cibolo that are not included in Atlas 14? Because you said that it's the basin, it's what flows into the San Antonio River. So I would assume that not all of our floodways flow into San Antonio River, but I'm not sure.
I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I have not done a deep dive into all of the Atlas 14 stuff.
And if there wasn't Atlas 14, then you would just use FEMA.
We would use FEMA, and we would make the engineers either use the 500-year as the regulatory floodplain or do their own Atlas 14 study.
Do their own, and then would that data go to Sarah? To the San Antonio River Authority?
We would not submit it to Sarah because we're outside their jurisdiction. We would submit it to federal FEMA.
You would submit it to what?
I call it Sarah FEMA and federal FEMA.
Sarah FEMA? I've never heard this one, so please explain.
That's my own terminology.
Okay.
In Bexar County, Bexar, Carnes, Wilson, and Goliad County, San Antonio River Authority is the FEMA cooperating technical partner, CTP,
Okay.
and so they can review and approve CLOMARs and LOMARs on behalf of FEMA. Guadalupe County is not part of their jurisdiction, and so when we do a CLOMAR or LOMAR, it goes to what I call federal FEMA, which is typically going to be Michael Baker and Associates or AECOM, someone in Virginia, and then they review it.
And does that information then get added to, I mean, you said that you have them do an Atlas 14 study.
In any case,
does it get imported into there?
Yeah, in any case, when a LOMAR gets submitted, whoever it's getting submitted to, it's going to get adopted as effective and will go into the record as best available information.
Okay.
Or actually regulatory information at that point. Now, it depends on the stream whether or not Atlas 14 would become effective or if the old hydrology would become effective.
Okay.
And the reason for that is if you're doing the Guadalupe River, that is a huge watershed. If you've got a project, kind of in the center of it, it doesn't make sense to study 200 miles of stream for this 100-acre tract.
Mhm.
And so what we would do is we would make them do Atlas 14 for that tract to a good enough quality to appease us, but it wouldn't be to a quality FEMA would accept because FEMA would make them do the entire stream or the entire river.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. The other thing is, at the very beginning, when you introduced yourself, you said that you are the floodplain administrator for the city of Cibolo. How many years have you been the floodplain administrator?
I became floodplain administrator August of last year when Rudy retired.
Was it really just August of last year? Okay.
August of 22. Yeah, I became city engineer and floodplain administrator at the same time. And I should mention I am a certified floodplain manager with TFMA, the Texas Floodplain Managers Association. I caught myself that time.
I think that answered all of my questions. Does anybody else have anything?
Yes. Okay. So I'm on Atlas 14 right now. So I put in my address, my Latin long, right? But the selection statement or the selection station is only allowing me to select San Antonio International. So how do I get my PF tubular and my supplemental information for the PDS-based perception frequencies?
The Atlas 14 data is actually gridded data. I do not recall the grid sizes, but they're relatively small compared to the region.
Okay.
And so you should be able to click on any site and get very specific information to that site.
Okay, so then the topo that I'm clicked on right now, it just like has it on Cibolo. Then those are all the precipitation frequencies with a 90% confidence interval.
And the 90% confidence is what we use.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
like in Bear County, the values range wildly across the county. On the south side of Bear County, 24-hour 100-year storm is, I'm going to make up a number, but it's close, 11.2 inches. It actually might be 11. On the north side of Bear County, it's 12.75 inches. And so they wanted to standardize, their flood studies throughout Bear County, and they created what they call precipitation zones. And so they broke Bear County up into 5 different regions based on Atlas 14. And so they approximated on the south, it's 11.25 inches. You go one level up, it's 11.75. One level up, it's 12.25. And at the top, it's 12.75. For Cibolo, that was a very exhaustive experience. I actually worked with the city on that, spent probably 9 months working on that and arguing about it. So in Cibolo, we're small enough, it doesn't vary that wildly. What I have is I tell engineers to go to the Atlas 14 Volume 11 website, click on their site, and use the values that come off of the website, and just give me a printout.
Okay. That 90% interval, is that based off the mean?
I don't know statistics very well.
Oh, you're an engineer.
That's why I don't do statistics.
Okay. I'm just going to leave all those questions alone then. Okay. All right. That's all.
So just a couple of questions. How do we know that anybody who is offering numbers or facts, if you want to call them facts, about floodplain, effect on floodplain or actually floodway, how do we know that they know what they're talking about? Do you have certifications? Do you have to go annual or biannual or five-year certifications to prove you're as smart as we know you are?
So as a professional engineer, you have to do continuing education every year, but that can be in any engineering or management topic that you want to do. As a certified floodplain manager, we have to do 8 hours of continuing ed every year specific to floodplains. I will tell you a lot of engineers that submit CLOMARs and LOMARs and flood studies are not CFMs. I will even say some of them don't really know what they're doing, which is why you have me. I review every CLOMAR, LOMAR flood study, most drainage reports that come in the door. I'm the one that reviews them. I've got staff, they review everything else. They'll review the simple drainage, but if there's even a little bit of complexity to the drainage, it comes to me. I'm the one that reviews it. Because I've got 20 years of experience doing this. I started my career reviewing flood studies. I know every trick.
And your stamps on it, right? When it goes off to FEMA, a CLOMAR goes off to FEMA, it has your stamp on it.
I don't stamp it if somebody else prepared it, but I do have my signature on it as the community official recommending approval.
But as City of Cibolo's drainage administrator, you don't have to stamp that? Like as
No.
a cover letter? Okay.
No, I don't sign and seal anything that's submitted to us.
Okay.
The engineer of record is the one that has to sign and seal it. They're the one putting their career on the line when they sign that. But as a floodplain administrator, I do sign, as a floodplain administrator, recommending approval to FEMA on typical drainage reports and flood studies that aren't FEMA. Then we do the letter of recommendation.
I know that one of the reasons that we were requesting for you to come here to talk to us is that we get a lot of feedback in the meetings saying that ever since you started building here, our area is flooding. Now it's causing flooding where we live. So can you kind of explain that? I mean, I've heard that since Still High School went in. The people around Still High School were saying ever since the high school went in, now our area is flooding. So if all of this is being done, these studies are being done, you know, everything that you've talked about today, how is that possible?
I'm going to try to be very careful in the way that I answer this.
Because we hear that a lot.
A
lot of people stand up and say, our area is already really flooded. You're wanting to build more. That's what caused our area to be flooded. So we have to be able to, I guess, like, kind of understand, because I'm not anywhere near you, so I don't understand some of what you're saying, but we have to kind of understand how that would be possible, how we can avoid that from happening, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think we can avoid that from happening.
So there's no guarantee if someone's building that somewhere down the road,
Right.
somebody's going to be flooded.
Well, being flooded, the claim of never having flooded before and the claim of actually flooding are three different things. And again, I'm trying to be very careful in the way that I answer this because I am the city engineer and I don't want to get in trouble and make a bunch of people mad. Some people tend to exaggerate. Some people have maybe not the best memories. The math never lies. I've been doing flood studies for 20 years now. When everything is based on mathematical predictions. Just because someone is not in a 100-year floodplain doesn't mean they'll never flood. We will get greater than a 100-year flood. Hurricane Harvey in Houston exceeded the probable maximum precipitation. More water fell out of the sky than the sky was physically capable of holding. Because it kept recharging. It just circled back over the coast and it would just keep recharging. And so but I run into this a lot. People say that they have never flooded before. They've lived there for 50 years, and they never flooded until the house across the street got built or the subdivision across the street got built. It is certainly possible that they never flooded. They never experienced a 100-year storm. They may have experienced a 25-year storm or even a 50-year, but not a 100-year. When that 100-year storm hits, we've got the models to show what's going to happen. I've had people tell me that they were in a 100-year event, and I knew they were in an area that had received a 100-year event, and they tell me, the water got to right here. And then I pull out the map, and I'm like, you mean right there where I've got that line? And it's in the exact right spot. There's a lot of research that goes behind the flood studies. From the Corps of Engineers and FEMA and private consultants. The mathematical equations that we use are accurate. So when someone does a flood study and I review the flood study, I'm confident that's where the floodplain's at.
So I think I'm going to piggyback off you here. We get a lot of people that do come in and they show us pictures and are like, look at all this water standing here. And now you want to, take away some impervious coverage and you want to put some concrete in and then the water's going to go swooshing down this way. Mm-hmm. So what is the difference then between standing water and flood? Like if you're talking from your perspective to us, because sometimes we get those pictures in, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, it is flooded. But what do you consider flooded versus it rained, like even today, or was it today? Yesterday? When did we have all the rain? I don't even know. Today, right? So I look at my front yard and I'm like, there's all this water everywhere. But do I call myself flooded? Get what I'm saying?
I guess it's up to individual perception. To me, flooding is water. And actually, there's a legal definition for insurance.
I mean, I'm sure I could look it up in the dictionary, but I want to learn from you as we're reviewing this. And you're saying, no, you can't possibly be flooded. But I'm looking at pictures of water up to their garage.
Well, and the source of flooding is often suspect. People think they're being flooded from a subdivision, but they're actually being flooded from, their neighbor's lot. Or it's just poor on-site grading. That's usually what it is. If you've got ponding water, I hate to say it, but it's your property that's the problem. You need to regrade your property to get the water off of it. if you have standing water. Flooding is water that is coming from someplace else, flowing across the property at depth and velocity. Now, velocity may be next to zero, but it is moving. Ponding water is very different. Ponding water is almost always a localized drainage issue isolated to one or two lots.
So, yeah, and this is kind of going off of that. We recently reviewed a plat, and Ms. Hubbard here had some pictures from her own neighborhood of some standing water in the up to the curb. And so I had talked about vaguely, because I'm not in drainage, that there's an acceptable amount of time that is allowed for water to drain off into a retention or whatever, that just because the water's up in the curb or up to the curb doesn't necessarily mean that it's not working, it's just working slower or things like that. Can you kind of expand upon that? Because that's one thing that we see a lot. Is people come to public hearings and they tell us, look at this picture. I'm just using Ms. Hubbard because she showed us just 2 meetings ago or something like that.
And I was going to go off that too, is that even though it is draining, and you're right, it did drain after whatever, the rain stopped and like the full flood came through. But during that time of the heavy rain and the flooding the way it was, if you have a smaller car, you're definitely not driving it through there because you're going to get stuck. And then if you have an SUV, you're just driving slow. So it's like, even though it's not technically flooded because it's going to drain, in that moment it is. And so if someone's got to go to work or pick up their kids or there's an emergency, like now you have this sort of inconvenience there.
So,
well, the water's moving. Yeah, the water's moving. Like it's like a river running down, but you can't technically really drive through there if you have a small car.
So in Cibolo and really in the Central Texas region in particular, the streets are our primary means of stormwater conveyance. The streets are designed so that the lots drain into the street. The depth of water in the street is often intended to get curb full, 7 inches deep on a design storm. Design storm on a street depends on the street classification in the drainage area, but it may be a 5-year event or a 25-year event. Curb full. And then the larger storm events have to be contained within the right-of-way or not flooding homes. If you got a 100-year storm on a local street, then you may have water in the front yards. It's going to be flowing, and most likely when the storm is over, it quits raining, that water's going to be gone within 15, 20 minutes. But yeah, the streets are the primary means of drainage conveyance, and that's largely because storm sewer is so expensive. If we put curb inlets and pipe to convey all of that underground, we couldn't afford to build any streets.
I think I might have actually brought it up, but Cibolo Valley Drive, brand new road, and when it rains, up to the curb. And it is difficult to drive in, but it's doable. But my where was I going with this? Oh, the dam, like it impacts the roadways lifespan to have that drainage in there, or is that taken in consideration of the design of the roadway that it's intended to be both detention or storm drain and a roadway, so it's constructed differently? Or
so it's the conveyance of stormwater doesn't really damage streets. It's standing stormwater that damages streets.
Okay.
When the water is allowed to sit there and soak through cracks or the joint between the asphalt and the curb, that is when you get pavement failure.
Okay.
But yeah, the streets, I mean, the asphalt's impervious. It's designed to convey runoff, but it's really standing water is what causes the damage.
But then how do we get all these streets, like in the subdivision right across Steele High School, it's just bump after bump after bump. Where is that coming from? That subdivision's only about 10 years old, so where's that coming from? You can't even drive in that road without it. I know somebody who was trying to sell his home and he couldn't because when they came to look at it, it was just dips in the road. So where's that coming from if it's not the running of the water? Because I'm thinking of running of water and I'm thinking of the Grand Canyon, so I'm thinking So how do you get that?
So there are a multitude of factors that affect the streets in Cibolo. Cibolo has some of the worst soil I've ever seen in my life. It is it's very hot clay. If you're a farmer, it's great. If you're building roads, it is terrible. Or houses, for that matter, yes. And so with clay soil, there is a lot of shrink and swell to it. There's a lot of vertical movement. As it dries out, it'll shrink. As it gets moist again, it'll swell. And so what's happening to most of Cibolo streets that are in bad condition is we were in a drought. I guess we're still in a drought. The soils have dried out. It swells. As we start getting a little bit of moisture, because it shrunk, it's created cracks. Water's getting in there, and it's going underneath the pavement, which is then causing that to moisten up, which is causing it to heave. And so you've got heaving here and shrinking here, and that's when you end up with washboarded streets and potholes. And then any cracks in the pavement just amplify the problem.
And infrastructure under there too,
Yes.
that compounds the issue.
My last question, and then I know it's creeping up on time. So you're not supposed to be redirecting onto someone else's lot, right? So like you have water, we build stuff, and that maybe goes along with what they're talking about with steel, right? So we're not supposed to be redirecting water onto someone else's lot. Is that what you were saying?
Correct.
Okay, so, but it's okay to redirect it onto city streets? Is that legal? And am I using the words legal and illegal? Maybe I'm just using them, So it's illegal basically to redirect onto someone else's lot. So if my neighbor builds whatever and all of a sudden their water is flowing onto my lot, that's not okay. But can they push it into the street on a city street? Is that still, quote, like legal or illegal?
Depends on which direction it was draining originally. Generally speaking, yes. There's a lot of caveats to drainage. But yes, the streets.
Well, but see, that's why we kind of asked for this, because a lot of the decisions we make come back to how it's affecting the house next to it, the house beside it, the property owner there. And we don't feel like you're talking about with the soil and this stuff, at least in my opinion, that we have a good handle on it, as we've seen. And it's devastating. And I work with an HOA that I need to get your information at the end. And when you come see one of our sections with the water that has been flowing from other people's houses and other people's community into my drainage channel that now I have to have you or someone come out and help me re-engineer, I'm just trying to help stop that from other people in this community. So that's why I'm trying to understand fully what you're talking about, because I feel like even though we're saying it's illegal or whatever, we're not supposed to redirect onto someone else's lot, it might kind of be okay if we direct it onto the city streets. I don't think you can really stop that. So I feel like it's a false statement that we even say, oh, you can't redirect water onto someone else's lot, because I see it happening every day I drive by and it's wet outside.
So that is part of what we look at in our review, is existing drainage patterns and proposed drainage patterns, and making sure that they are matching existing as much as reasonably possible. If you've got a lot that is sheet flowing onto a neighboring property, we're going to make you do detention because the code says you have to, and in that case, detention does make sense. But I'm also going to make you put a level spreader, so that you're not point discharging out of a pond, you're spreading it out to get back to that sheet flow condition that occurred under existing conditions or pre-project conditions. When you're doing a subdivision, you're absolutely going to regrade all of those lots to drain into a street. You can drain across one residential lot, and so if you've got do y'all know type A, B, C lot grading? Type A lots drain towards the street. And I'm not a residential guy, so I might get this wrong. A's drain towards the street, C drains towards the back property line, and B's split, half to the front, half to the back. I might have B and C switched, but that's the general idea. Did I get it right? I think so. And so often what you'll see is you'll have a type A lot that or you'll have a type C lot that drains onto a type A lot, which then drains into a street. So you've got one lot draining across another. You'll see that quite frequently. A type B, you may have the front of a B going to a street, and then the back of a B going onto an A and into another street. And so that's localized diversion. That's designed into the subdivision. When that subdivision is discharging outside of their boundary, they have to be discharging to the same location the water was previously going. Because you can't redirect, but also you have to accept what was naturally coming onto you. And so most times the water is naturally going there, but it may not be a very well-defined flow path, and so people don't recognize it. Is something that I run into quite frequently, both in Cibolo and outside of Cibolo. And so it's one of those, it's really on a case-by-case basis. If there's a concern, bring it to me. I'll take a look at it. But we do, I mean, every subdivision that comes in, that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at.
So that's allowed, you're allowed to drain from one property over another and into a drainage or roadway or whatever, because it's part of an overall master drainage plan.
Yeah, I mean, really, when...
I mean, it's intended to do that.
Yes.
But sometimes you'll have residents that move into a house that it's been there for 20 years and they don't know that and they think that there's an issue. Got it. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Or the neighbor built a footer at the bottom of his fence and blocked runoff and redirected runoff. Again, growing up, our neighbor built a berm on the side of his house that redirected water into the side of our house. That was the third time we flooded. He was not allowed to do that. But that actually has a big part of why I'm a drainage engineer.
Does anybody else have any questions?
No, I think I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, we really appreciate you answering all of our questions and the presentation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Otto.
The next item on our agenda is item 10, UDC CIP Master Plan and Staff Updates.
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, I would just like to circle back to letter B. I know Mr. Ford did pass out the written version of what he had shared verbally as far as the Steel Creek Unit 9 plat. And so I did confirm again with the city attorney, there's no need to take another vote unless anyone does wish to change their vote because of seeing it in a written form instead of just the verbal update. So I just want to make sure that there's the opportunity if anyone needs to do that. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yes, I have just a few updates for you on some different projects that you've seen or that have been coming for here or ones that staff has been working on internally. So as far as site plans, we do have a Whataburger site plan. They did recently get a pedestrian easement that was needed, so now we are moving forward with getting the proper signatures on that and doing the actual site plan. Site plan for 504 File, that was one that came before P&Z, and then also to City Council for a sidewalk variance, and since that was granted, now updating the site plan accordingly. Equipment share in our industrial park, Dorado multifamily, that's up there by the Cibolo Crossing development on I-35, Everyday Christian Fellowship, just a little bit down the street, and then Turning Stone C7 Lot 3 for a retail center that's in there.
Where's the Dorado?
That's on the backside of Cibolo Crossing.
Okay.
So where like Santico's is, but
Yes.
on the other side of Rips Croisley.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Plats that are currently in review, you had Steel Creek Unit 9, which was on the agenda tonight, and will move forward to council at the January 9th meeting. An update from the time of this being published, the FM 78 and Main commercial, that was a minor plat, and we did actually get the final approval maybe 5 hours before this meeting.
Okay.
So they did address all the comments. Cibolo Crossing Phase 3 is another minor plat that's up there at the Santico's area. And then Signature Plating, they are doing an expansion, but required an amending plat within the industrial park. Following up on some of the P&Z recommendations, So Steel Creek Unit 4, the preliminary plat, there had been a recommendation of denial when it came to planning and zoning because there were some outstanding comments. In that time between P&Z and council, they were able to address it, and they did get a recommendation for approval, and council did approve it last night at their meeting. Varsalou Estates, they had their final plat. You recommended approval, and it did also get approval at council last night. Cibolo Farms Unit 1 final plat, you recommended approval. It received approval last night at City Council. The 508 North Main sidewalk variance, you recommended approval. Last night was just the public hearing for council. It'll be for action at the January 9th meeting. The 12090 IH10 West rezone, that was to go from C4 to agricultural. You recommended approval, and it had a public hearing at council last night. It'll go for action January 9th. The UDC section, amending the MUR, or the Mixed Use Residential Employment Center, to allow for the tow yard use. You recommended approval, and that did get approval last night at City Council. The UDC section amendment to Article 17 about the landscape buffer, reducing it from 15 feet to 5 feet only in the Old Town District. You recommended approval, and it did get approval at council last night. And then finally, on UDC Article 20, this had to do with final acceptance of public improvements. You did recommend approval, and council did recommend, they didn't recommend approval. They took action and approved it last night. As far as some upcoming dates, I just want to make you aware the Master Plan Advisory Committee does have its next meeting on December 19th, which is next Tuesday. And then, great news, our next planning and zoning meeting will be back at City Hall. So this is our last P&Z meeting here at Noble Grove. It's been great. We're very fortunate to have had this facility, of course, but we're looking forward to being back at our more permanent home over there. And then one other thing I wanted to mention. So last night, the City Council did vote to appoint a new Planning and Zoning Commissioner from District 6, and that is Mr. Ryan Thompson, who's been with us today. So we're looking to get him all that required, email setup, open records training, things like that. And then looking forward to having him join us at the January meeting. Would you like to just say a word? Or you don't have to, but
I can do.
Quick little hi if you want.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Thompson. Been living in Cibolo for about 10 years. I got a background in public administration. I went to school for it. I'm pursuing my master's in management. Retired here. I worked for the Army Baylor program for about 4 or 5 years as an operations, basically manager out at Fort Sam. So we had about 12 to 13 different cohorts. I'm also a barber, board of directors of a nonprofit to help at-risk youth and people, keeping them from recidivism, getting back into prison and stuff like that. I also run a football camp back home in Virginia as well. And I'm a stay-at-home dad for the most part of my life.
Well, welcome to the commission. We cannot wait for you to join us. Sounds like you'll be a valued member just like the rest of us.
I used to be a landscaper, so when he was talking about the grading of the land, that is it. And the infrastructure, I like the city. It's a small town, feel, everyone likes it. So I'm here, might as well work, right?
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you.
When is our next meeting? I'm sorry, I may have missed it.
January 10th.
Okay.
And then we do have some more trainings coming up that we've been able to secure. So January we'll skip one, but then in February we did confirm that Mr. Foose with our Public Works and CIP department will be able to come, and he will be bringing along our new CIP manager, Mr. Julio Gomez. And so the two of them are going to come and give an update on the different capital improvement projects throughout the city. But between now and then, if you think of any specific questions you'd like, please just email me, and we can make sure that they prepare that in their presentation. And then in March, we did confirm that a representative from GVEC will be able to come.
Have we found anybody from GVSUD, or will Foose be talking about water supply?
I think we can ask him what he would be able to share on that.
Okay,
yes.
that'd be great. And then if we could find somebody from GVSUD to talk about, because I know like the city's kind of split in half. So that would be great. Julio Gomez?
Gomez,
okay.
yes.
And where did he come from?
He was previously with the city of San Antonio.
Great. At SAS or
I think with the city.
Okay.
He just started, and the reason why we're doing that one in February, he just started, I think, last Monday. So we'd like to give him a little chance to get on his feet before he's making a presentation.
Too. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
That's it for staff. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is items for future agenda, which Ms. Lee already went over a couple of those with our training that will be in February. I forgot to write that part down. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to request to be added to a future agenda?
Through some discussions, we've pretty much just come to the conclusion that January is considered the commission year, the beginning of the commission year. So that would be the perfect time to have a reconstitution of the commission. Doesn't mean anything's going to change, but that's when you typically, you would begin your business year, and so that's when you reconstitute your officers.
Yes, so every board and commission in January, your first regularly scheduled meeting, there will be an election amongst yourselves to appoint your chair or vice chair. Okay. So we will have an agenda item on that, and that, again, is all boards and commissions.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And that'll be on the agenda? Thank you. On the January 10th. Just making sure I've got it right. Thank you. Anything else?
I do want to kind of share, since we're going to talk about January 10th, I am probably not going to be here for that day. I was just accepted into the PhD program at the University of the Incarnate Word.
That's awesome.
And orientation is that day, and I'm trying to get out of it.
No, do it.
Well, no, it's orientation.
That's okay, do it.
But I was hoping to do it virtually so I could record and then run over here while it's going on. But I haven't gotten
Enjoy
any
those
feedback.
milestones. We
So-
understand. That's awesome news.
So I just wanted to let you know, if I'm not here, that's the reason.
That's
so.
an awesome news. Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yes. I'll-
So as far as when we reappoint our chair and vice chair positions, and that's January, because we're not even getting, though, any kind of, what did we call it? Not bylaws. What did we say that you guys are, the directives until February? Can we wait until February? Because I think it'd be nice for people to have an outline of what and why and who and
Expectations. I've never received anything about
I will give you the policy that we have in place, but that means in 30 days it's going to change, it possibly could change.
Okay, so there is no way to push it until February when we're all versed on what the new directives from council are? No.
The charter that says it has to be January, right?
That's the council's policy that says January, so all the commissions will be January.
January,
But
okay.
I'll send you the
Unless we
policy
table
that's
it, no.
The policy that's in place is basically the policy that tells how a meeting is run, and that is a requirement of the city charter. And so the council is run the same way as every board and commission has to run. And so that's what this policy does.
Can in the meantime, can you send that to the rest of the existing policy to the rest of us so that we have that, we can review it. It probably goes over the responsibility of the chair and the vice chair and things like that. So that way we can be prepared for somebody to volunteer if they wanted to be chair or vice chair. They can know what they're getting themselves into.
It's very vague. I mean, basic.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you could send it to us, that would be great.
That's what you guys already sent me, then it is extremely vague.
It-
It is.
But if it's what I've already got, yeah.
The policy is a very vague rule, using Robert's Rules of Order, it's a very vague sense of Robert's Rules of Order, how you, how you do how you run your meeting. But it kind of tells you how to do it. And I will send it to you, but I will let you know there are a few things that will be changed in it. The council doesn't review it until the 12th of January. And I know that they're going to change things, so that means it'll come back to me, and I'll have to make those changes before it's actually adopted.
So you won't even have a draft of their requested changes until after we meet next?
I won't.
Okay.
So that's why it's going to change. I
Okay.
know it's going to change, but I'll give you a draft of, I mean, the way you're running your meetings right now is exactly how it is in the policy right now. The purpose of of a chairman is specifically to run the meeting, just like the mayor. He runs a meeting. That's all he does. The difference between a commission and a board or a committee and council is you guys get to vote as a chairman. The mayor doesn't get to vote unless it's a tie. That was changed in the policy a few years back.
Okay.
That's the only difference in that. But other than that, the council still has to give me an email if they're not going to make a meeting to be excused. The same thing you have to do as a board or commission. That doesn't change. It kind of gives the order of how the meetings are supposed to be run. The vice chairman's only purpose is to fill in if the vice chairman is not, if the chairman is not there.
Only purpose?
That's
Life
it.
is just to be.
That's the purpose. That's the purpose of having somebody there in those two positions. And that's for every commission and committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that item completed, the next item on our agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.